Welcome to our second session regarding master planning. We'll follow pretty much the same format as we did last week, where we begin with the Pledge of Allegiance and then follow up with public commentary. So if you'd like to stand, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We, the board, appreciate the value of public comment and the importance of allowing you to express your concerns and comments. We will allow 5 minutes for public commentary from each person. The board expects personal decorum and factual information from the speaker. The president reserves the right to interrupt the speaker when the statement is too lengthy, personally directed, abusive, or obscene, or if it interferes with the orderly conduct of the meeting. Is there anyone signed up to speak? I know a couple people are signed up to speak.
Yes. We have Dan Norris, Amy Urick, and Bethany Norwald.
Mr. Norris, would you like to come forward?
How long? How long?
30 seconds. 5 minutes.
Oh, I can do that.
Dan Norris, Part 2.
I emailed this information about 5:15, so you can pick it up. My name is Dan Norris. I'm the guidance counselor at Test Middle School. Two quick topics. The one is the theoretical versus the reality of room usage. I've prepared information about our full-time teachers times 5 periods per day. That's actual teaching time. That's 125 periods, plus we pick up 2 periods of a traveling art teacher, 2 periods of a traveling family and consumer sciences teacher, 2 periods of foreign language, who's a traveling teacher, 1 of band and 1 of orchestra. So if you think about the whole week, that's 133 periods taught in the school week. We have 30 classrooms, so if you go times 6 periods, that's 180 periods available. So the remaining periods for prep periods, if a teacher gets to stay in their room, that comes out to be 25. So the bottom line is we have 22 periods in a week where the rooms aren't in use. And that would be 15 for the band, 2 periods a day times 5, and 1 period for the RCS computer lab, because we do have math classes that go in there, and then that really leaves 2 periods extra that I couldn't figure out whose room's open one of those 2 periods. So when we think about what the building can hold in our current configuration with 457 students, rooms, not counting the life skills kitchen or the library, we really have, if the teacher gets to stay in their room for their own prep, there are 2 periods, or 22 periods left open. The second thing is the enrollment summary. We received an enrollment summary on as of January 3rd, 2012, and this is the current grades 4, 5, and 6. I know that there's going to be redistricting, and I know that you're going to have to finagle where some of these go. But in looking just at CR splitting between Star and Vale, Garrison going to Charles, Charles has 164 kids theoretically coming to test. Garrison 120, CR 127, Star 131, and Vale 82. And when you take out the Logos program, we currently have then 168 7th graders who will be rising to 8th grade. That's a total of 792. And so when I said before 750 some kids, well, 792 is the actual figures as of the 3rd. And on the floor plan of the master plan on page 40, it shows the building configuration, and it says 661. So when you're talking about redistricting, there's what you're going to have to deal with, 792 down to that 660 some number. And so we hope that you can do that. And then, of course, when you add the number of teachers it's going to take then to cover those new kids, then you're talking still traveling teachers throughout the building and data walls, prep periods, etc. So you can just consider the information and use it, hopefully, to some value. Are you on the cabinet email or the school board email group?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
I'm on those.
Okay.
You got it to me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
We have a home school game, so I'm going to go.
But why didn't he go ahead and figure out Highland, Crestdale,
Yeah.
Fairview, and Westview, Dan?
I'm only about me.
Amy?
Dr. Borf, President Baumgardner, members of the board, and administrators. As you may remember, my name is Amy Urich. I am a teacher as well as a parent for Richmond Community Schools. I was asked last week to speak and to give some information. I wasn't prepared, so now I've come back with some more specific information. Tonight I came to share concerns as a parent and the knowledge I have as a teacher based on the preschool program that is near and dear to my heart at the Early Learning Center. I am a strong believer in public education, but I am afraid we may be heading down a path of decline enrollment and how education in Richmond is perceived and regarded. First, I would like to speak as a parent. I have 2 children who attend Westview Elementary, and I have never had issues regarding to any concerns I have with teachers or how my children are learning. However, I do have a major concern about my 10-year-old going to the middle school with 8th graders. The main reasons of concerns that I feel would be, one would be safety, such as bullying, riding the bus, and exposure to more mature language and actions that those older kids portray. Children, to me, already have to grow up way too fast, so why make it any faster than we have to? I know that I am not the only parent that feels this way about 5th graders moving into a building with 8th graders, and I must say that it's a very unsettling feeling for myself to possibly be thinking about for next school year. Now I would like to speak to you as a teacher. In May of 2011, 5 members, including myself, from the Early Learning Center visited the Wayne Township Preschool, which is located next to the Ben Davis High School in Indianapolis. The preschool looked at a 40-year study known as the Perry Project study when developing and looking at their program. This particular center has been open for 2 years, and they service children ages 3 to 5 years old. The principal, Catherine Rush, shared with us some information determining the factors as to why they created a center-based preschool for 3 to 5-year-olds. Some of these factors included creating an emotional environment suitable for 3, 4, and 5-year-olds, collaboration among staff, therapists not having to travel to various locations, which better use of service of their time, transportation to one location, consistent routine and location for children for possibly up to 3 years, because some of our preschool children can be with us for 3 years, and school pride, making preschool a school instead of an add-on to another location. I must say, at the Early Learning Center, we meet most of those factors, creating a safe, friendly preschool environment for our children and our families to feel welcome. Itinerant staff and teachers located in one building for services to be provided. Providing transportation for our students with IEPs, a place for children to grow both all together physically, emotionally, and mentally. Our staff has probably just as much pride in our building as any other school in the system, and we're committed 100% to making sure our children and our program is the best that it can be. I have full confidence that the staff of the Early Learning Center, who a lot of them came with me tonight, will adapt to whatever decision is made in the master plan. However, a center-based program, preschool program, such as the Early Learning Center, would be an ideal situation to continue educating our students. It has been a very successful program for the past 8 years. I could not come back and not tell you this information, share this information with you. I was afraid in a few years I'd look back and regret not coming and speaking about how I feel about being a parent and also a teacher for Richmond Community Schools. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I would like to invite each and every one of you to come to the Early Learning Center to see our program, to see what we're about before your decisions are made. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Stewart, there was someone else signed up, and I didn't get the name. I'm sorry.
Okay, it is Bethany Norwalt.
Good evening. I'm very nervous. Okay, my name is Bethany Norwalt, and I have 3 children, one at the high school and 2 at CR Richardson, and I believing that closing CR would be a mistake. I'd also like to stress to the board that closing CR would directly hit the pockets of some of the most destitute families in the city. The support system for at-risk kids at CR is stable, and behavioral problems have diminished significantly. Most of the CR student population walks to school, and many of their parents do not have access to transportation or use one vehicle for multiple people in the household. Even if the school were to solve transportation issues and guarantee our children's safety on the buses, there are several other reasons and questions that I have regarding the closure. One is, why is CR considered to be an isolated school? From my observations at Vail, there is absolutely no room for site growth, where at CR the site is perfect for growth should the need arise in the future. Of course, the same could be said for Highland Heights or Garrison in terms of physical site growth, but these schools are country schools and aren't a hub of community activity in the same way that CR is the South Side community now. I noted the perspective of CR being an isolated school at the last work session, and I'm not sure how the board can move forward with a plan in which the Hibbard building is refurbished and opened as a magnet school. Wouldn't this magnet school, which would be located only a few blocks further down the street from where CR is now, by the current argument of isolation, also be seen as an isolated environment? Of course, the flip side of that, investing in Hibbard, while the CR building remains open, would allow for collaboration and growth between the schools that I believe would be a major draw for potential Richmondites. It would be an epicenter of activity for the South Side, both during the school year and during the summer, that would make Richmond proud. If CR is shut down and a magnet school is to open right next to it, would this not be something that would be unattractive to potential families and those students? With the current plan, the families of possible students might be inclined to wonder why a forward-thinking magnet school is located next to an empty, unused building. Additionally, I have my misgivings in regard to the motives surrounding CR being recommended for closure, and I'm not going to say all of them, but one of the main ones is that I believe CR was mainly slated for closure as a concession to Garrison parents, so that they would be guaranteed that their child would not attend CR, as they have voiced previously this would be a deal breaker for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else out there who would like to speak? Sir? You could state your name. I know you were here last week. I just don't remember your name.
My name is Paul Croucher, and tonight I just want to bring you some ideas, maybe answer some of your questions. I'm not in favor of adding on to the Crestdale addition at this time, or even renovating that building. The thing of it is, for the last 10 years, we've had declining enrollment in this town. I know that Galileo has opened a 7th and 8th grade classroom, and I know that you're potentially going to lose 30 students next year to that program alone. In addition, I know of at least 10 kids that's moved out of Richmond since this year started, and I don't know what our exact enrollment is now, but from listening to you, Crestdale is a place with the most land. If this program is successful, wouldn't we be considering, even if we had declining enrollment, consolidating some of these schools back into a newer school? Isn't that what master planning would be about, a plan for declining students? And wait, we're going to react 2 years from now when we see declining enrollment still. What are we going to do? What schools are we going to close next? And where are we going to put these students? The places that we're going to put these students is probably in a newer school building, and I would hate us to spend $4.2 $9 million on a building that's not suitable to us, when we can spend, my understanding from listening, is we can spend $90,000 and maybe get a modular building there. A little nervous talking to you, so please be patient. I might get good at this and eventually. But our room for growth will be at the C.R. Richardson area. I like Jeff's idea of just tearing that down and getting it ready for growth. Or at the Crestdale site. That's just in my opinion. I don't know why, as a board, you can't move forward with the alternative education. I think our understanding here is that Baxter doesn't need nothing. It's ready to go. Why not tomorrow move it? Well, there's one reason why, is because Birth to Five's there. That would be an issue. We could move Birth to Five probably into our family literacy center now, and probably even make room by moving just a few. That part of this process would be done. The benefits to that would be is we could identify all the students that we want in alternative education and start moving them in now. Another benefit of that would be is knowing special education laws. IEPs have to be written for every student each year, which means that these 40 to 90 students in this program, IEPs, are going to have to be written for them now, before the year ends. You're going to turn around when you move them into a new school and write 40 to 90 more. Okay, we don't have to do that. We can get busy probably in 30 days. Okay, that's some concerns there, and we will have this thing in place. In addition, by moving some of the marketing benefits would be of combining this 4x4x4 plan, is we should consider our teachers need textbooks and our students need textbooks. I think that when they're isolated at test to fourth graders, if you have 6 or 7 math classes for our classes of fourth graders, you ought to invest in a cart. And each math class could have 30 books, and we could go around and move this cart, and every student will now have a book. And we will no longer have to do all this copying and teachers running down here, and we can save some trees. The C.R. Richardson site, we should be planning there too for the Go Green project if we want. That would probably be ideal. Going back another point about these middle schools and where we would be 2 years from now if we keep on having declining enrollment, which is something we need to consider.
Mr. Kutcher, your time is up.
Thank you for your comments, though,
I
and your
have-
questions.
Well, I'd like to go forward if I can. I don't know if there's anybody else would like to speak, but
Are you ready to wind it up?
No, I have a lot more thoughts, and I think if you're getting some from my conversation, you should listen. I mean,
The maximum time for speakers is 5 minutes per person, but thank you.
all right, thanks.
Are we having another public commentary section at the end of the?
No.
Okay.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Last week, Dr. Borf and the Cabinet heard the board's questions and concerns, and tonight is a response to those questions. So, Dr. Borf?
I would like to begin by thanking the people who were here tonight to address the board and to invite them, if they have more to submit, to enter into our website and give us your comments. That would be one place where a lot of people throughout the community have given additional thoughts. And if you don't have access to our website, we can make that available here in this office. That would be, you would be welcome to do that. I'd like to take the board back to the document that we created months ago now, and that would be the master planning objectives. We had an imperative, and I talked about that imperative. All of you have talked about the imperative, and that is that we had an excellent school year last year. We came off as the leading Wayne County school district in terms of a raising rate of I-step passage. We had all of our elementaries at an A rating by the Department of Education, and the school district met adequate yearly progress. We know, and we've talked about this many times, that that didn't happen without numerous support mechanisms, as well as the good teaching and the good curriculum that we have throughout the year. What this whole planning process has been about has been to secure some of those resources so that they don't disappear with the funding stream that disappears. One of the questions last week that we had was, how can you guarantee student success with this? While there are no guarantees in this business, the whole process is to support student learning and student progress that we've had to date. That's where I'll begin, and that's probably where I'm going to end. But there were several questions, and what we're going to do is chunk those questions together and attempt to address those. I think Brian Zimmerman, with the Palladium item, asked if we would be answering all the questions, and I said I'd like to think we could be answering all the questions. I know we're going to be addressing most of them. I don't know about answering. So as we attempt to address them, you'll need to let us know whether you need more information. A major concern was the financial. There were several questions about the financial analysis, where we're going with this, whether it will be long-term satisfaction of issues and challenges. And what I'd like to do is ask Bob Coddington to talk about the financial picture of this plan and why we think it's a strong one and supportive of your objectives.
Thank you, Dr. Borf. Could we dim the lights so we can see this?
I'll get that.
And I'm going to get a pointer.
Wait a minute. Dim is not dark. Thank you. I got
Right there.
I put this in a couple different formats because that was what drove this process, in my perspective, to make sure that any plan that we gave would balance the budget. So the plan that was distributed on December the 13th, Dr. Borf gave a detailed master plan with a lot of input that we would balance the budget, both in 2011, 12, 13, and 14. So I've extrapolated the plan that he gave and put it into a format that we're used to looking at. So you can see in 2011 that we had a positive $236,000. That's where we ended the year last year, following a minus $1.7 million deficit in 2010. Now, on a quick history note, we had $2 million taken away from us at January 1st, 2010. We thought we would have a $2 million deficit because of the prudent, responsible board that we have and operators. That was $300,000 better than projected. And we were given the edict to balance the budget. Now, the only reason I bring this up because people are going to say, that's a plan. Can you execute it? Will it meet the needs? And the only thing we have to go by, if you can't project it, is past history. In the last 2 years, that was $300,000 better because we executed a plan. We balanced the budget in 2011 because we executed a plan. Should this plan get adopted, and I'm going to show you how, where, and when, we will execute this plan to make sure that we have a positive cash balance in 2012, positive cash balance in 2013, and a positive cash balance in 2014. So let's look at 2012, because now 2012, while it says projected, is getting pretty much into focus, what it looks like. That revenue figure of $35,254,000 from the state was confirmed as late as Thursday when Dr. Borf got a letter from the state saying these are the numbers that we're going to be from our state basic grant, and Dr. Borf immediately emailed, Bob, are these the numbers you're using? And I believe my response back to him was, to the penny. So we're pretty close. We're right on the mark on this $35,254,000. Everything else is other income. That's summer school, all-day kindergarten, interest income, adult evening school, this. So we've got very little downtick, and the only downtick, I flatlined everything on other income, except for our student transit, which we got $56,000 last year. I don't expect to get this much this year. Why? Because summer school was discounted for us not to get that money. So it's automatically the money we got for summer school for the third grade academy that they ask us if we could make an adjustment so they could fund their program better. So that's what we've done. So let's look at 2012. In the fall, we had a reduction in teachers, and we had a contract negotiations with everybody who went down this table, from the board to the teachers to the classified staff, have taken a reduction in the health insurance premiums. We have to pay more this year. Everything that has been done has been dollarized here. So you can look at our non-teaching salaries are down a little bit this year. Our teaching salaries are going to be down. The benefits. Now look at the teacher benefits. It's going from this to that, and that's the VEBA and the VALIC reduction that they said we're going to have this year. And you see that's a one-time saving, so you see it goes up in 2013. So we have dollarized that, and it's not ongoing. It's not an ongoing savings. You see health insurance. We had a premium holiday that saved us almost $600,000 last year. Why didn't that go up $600,000? Because we have a reduction in our health insurance that the school corporation will pay, and we've saved almost $400,000. That's why it's only $2. Everything else is pretty flatlined except utilities. And we look. So that's already expenditures and savings that we know and that we believe we can execute. Now, we have operational savings. Now, the operational savings that we're talking about, and that's the reduction of the environmental service people, for closure of 3 buildings, the principals of 3 buildings, some teaching staff from 3 buildings, that we don't get to garner 100% of that savings in September, October, November, and December. Now, these numbers you can tie right back to our December 13th presentation that Dr. Borf made. Because you see, he said it was going to be $655,000. And in 2013, when we get a full year savings, it will be $655,000. But this savings, we're only going to pick up for the 4 months this year. So it's $218,000. Now, estimate retirement savings net. Now, but we believe that we're going to have 15 teachers retire. That's historic. And that we're going to replace those 15 teachers. When we do that, the net is the difference between a high-end teacher and a teacher, and we factored this, help me if I'm right, Dr. Borf, at a master's degree in 5 years. Wasn't that, yeah. So a retiring teacher being replaced by a master's in 5, not a beginning teacher. Savings on that's $415,000, but the savings for this year is $144,000. Estimated reduction in staff from the grade reconfiguration and having level classrooms and better and fewer buildings to do is $482,000. That's a number that should be familiar with because we're going to, that's in Dr. Borf's plan. Now that's 10 FTE reduction. That'll save us $167,000, and next year $482,000. Now, we know that Safe Schools Healthy Student does not go away until January 1st, 2013. So anything that we're going to add back into there for 2012 is 0. But starting January 1st, 2013, we have a sustainability plan, which is what's driving all of these cuts, so we can save $303,000 of Safe Schools Healthy Students. And we'll talk about that in a few moments. Now, stabilization. We know that we have 19 FTE that are being paid out of job stabilization money. That's $293,000 of cost this year and $845. Again, numbers you can find in the December 13th presentation by Dr. Borov. So, we execute this plan between now and August. Our revenues, 36,811. Our expenditures, 36,8. We have a positive $164,000. That's balancing the budget. We now have a game plan. We have a scorecard, and then now it's up to us, should this be approved, to execute this plan.
So why is there no reduction in utility costs in 12 and 13 and 14?
Those are the receipts.
No reduction in utility costs, because we're going to pick that, because that's one, we know utility costs are going to, water goes up 10% a year.
I know, but aren't we going to be operating fewer buildings?
I picked those up in our operational savings.
That's where, oh, you didn't mention that. You
Right,
only said.
because we haven't done it yet. Once the plan is approved, then I put it back up. But that's in our operational savings on the December 13th document,
Okay.
how much of utilities we will pay.
Well, because you'd only mentioned people.
Yes.
And not utilities, and that's why.
Not utilities, but it is-
Okay.
it is
It's in
in-
the operational, okay.
In the operational plan, the 655.
But keep in mind, we have over $1 million of our utilities that comes out of the capital projects, and this is just general fund.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, that's correct. Yes.
But when you said we're saving, operational savings for 3 schools, but we're opening 1.
And
So
that's already been.
is that already
that is-
figured?
Yes, and
Okay.
I can get you to the document if you, in fact, it's called the operational savings. And I'll be glad to discuss, it's in.
I know, it's
It's in the
I was
master
just
plan
asking
document.
because you
It's
said
in the master
3.
plan, and
Okay.
it shows per building, and then the add back. So we
Okay.
saved, closing the 3 buildings, about 1.1 million, but the net savings is 655,000
Okay.
because of the add back and the utility costs and stuff at Hibbert. But it has been factored in. Thank you, good question. We bring this then to financial, and I'll answer any financial questions, the income and expense. I hope that takes it off the operational, off of a presentation, and puts it into a format that we're used to looking at, and how we do that. Are there any questions financially?
Would you like to go over the capital projects impact?
Yes.
Okay, hold on now. Just hold
Scott, could I have the next, there, whoa, could we bring that up a little bit? Can you?
I just redid it because it was so small. I'm going to need magnifying glass. One called. See?
Yeah, that'll be good. And Mr. Schleifer, as you well know, you've got to talk rainy day, you have to talk CPF, you have to talk this year's money, last year's money, carryover, and I've tried to do this on one piece of paper and separating capital projects. One of the things that we ended the year with a capital project cash balance of $5,345,424.50. Of that, we have an encumbrance, that's bills that we have already POs for that we have to pay that the bills haven't come in yet, haven't been done, of $35,692. We have carryover from other buildings for projects that haven't been completed, and or a contingency because of the size of the buildings and what needs to be done of high school of 19,000, $18,000, Warner for $49,000, for $67,000. So that money's earmarked for those two buildings. So you have to subtract that. So our money for carryover and outside the master plan is $67,896 plus the $35 for $103,000. So we don't have all of that $5.3 million to spend. We have to take $103 off of it. So that gives us a cash balance that we can now go spend of $5,241,836. Right there. Then we have carryover available for master plan projects, $19,000 for Hibbard, $2,311,000 for Crestdale, $26,900 for Dennis, $8,600 for Charles. So we have already appropriated and cash available to do this much project. That's $2,874,817. Now, if we refer back to last August when we put our capital projects plan together, one of the ones that we were talking about a mid-major of doing, because Star is no longer a walking school, but where there's a lot of transportation, of redoing possibly the Star parking lot.
And pick drop.
Now, we do not, and I'll show this in a minute, have $350,000 out of this year's revenue that we can do that. We would have to take that out of savings. So I've just earmarked that says, well, I'm not ready to go out and spend this yet. Then you put in your rainy day fund. And we earmarked $1,500,000 of the rainy day for capital project plans if and when we need those. We also, when the state closed the preschool education fund 3 years ago, we took the cash balance of it to be used for special education, and we put it in the rainy day fund. Now may be the time to do it. So cash available in the rainy day fund and the capital projects fund for this master plan implementation is $6,791,000. This is why Dr. Boroff, in his December 13th report, could say we can do what needs to be done without raising the taxes. And in fact, it was in somewhat of a misnomer when he said without raising the taxes, because in 2013, our taxes will go down 11 cents under this plan. Why? Because the test debt will be coming off, and we're saying we're not going to fund this with any debt. So in fact, this plan isn't budget neutral on the taxes. It takes us 11 cents off of it. Now, can you slide down, Scott, to go, what's the CPF plan look like for 2012? Good, thank you. We know that we get $3,080,000 in revenue because we got $3,047,000 this year. Now, we don't have our taxes. I don't even have a 1782 or a budget order from the state. So I'm using that from historical perspective. And what we try to do is, I say every year, is we live within, year to year within the money and the revenue that we get. Being, we're going to get $3,080,000. We're going to spend $3,080,000. These are the facilities and how we would spend that. There's only $301,000 for all facilities. And out of insurance and utilities, Mr. Schleifer, there's your $1,384,000. $700,000 cash every year for the sustainability of the technology program. $145,000 for copier leases, and $550,000 for emergency maintenance in all 13 buildings that we'll be needing to support, that Mr. Robinson does an incredible job of maintaining the buildings at that level.
And that's already removed the levy neutrality of the pension
And that's
bond.
removed levy neutrality. Very good point, yeah. So we're going to net $3,080,000. This is how we're going to spend it. You see, that's why I said if we do the STAR project, we have to take that $350,000 out of savings, should we elect, and that's what we want to do. Or maybe we pare it down, maybe we don't do it at all. But if we do it, it can't be out of the $3,080,000. It's got to be out of our savings. So what does that leave on our rainy days? See, we have $1.9 million up here. We're starting this year with a rainy day fund of $5,951,000. Technology rainy day, that sustainability, that we use one-time money to get that up. Mr. Tidrow has $127,000 left to do that. That's been earmarked for sustainability. We're going to, if this plan would be approved and we would need it, $1.5 million for the master plan, $400,000. So we would then spend $2,027,000. So should we spend every one of these nickels, which we won't, we would have zero balance in the capital projects, and we'd have a reserve in a rainy day of $3,924,000, and we've lowered our tax rate in 2014 by 11 cents. Now, this is intermingling a lot of funds and looking at that. That's why I tried. I'll be glad to then answer any questions one might have.
The $400,000 for the preschool, that's not currently carried on the rainy day. Is that correct? Is that on
That's in the rainy day balance.
It's already in the rainy day.
Yes, it's in the rainy day balance. But I didn't want to forget, so is the $1.5 million for that.
Well, no, what I meant, though, is on the, what do you call it, the cash flow statement?
Mm-hmm.
That's in the
Yes.
$5 million total
Yes.
already.
Because you see, there is no cash balance in a preschool fund because we don't have a preschool fund.
Okay, well, sometimes there's other funds, and I didn't know if that was a separate fund by itself or not.
No, it's in the rainy day.
So I want to clarify one statement you made about zero. You were saying that I just want to make sure, if we do all of the things suggested in the master plan, we would use the savings that we've already generated in the capital projects. We would use this year's capital projects and some of the rainy day fund. But yet, is that what you said?
That's what I said, but what I said, this is an accounting of cash and how much is available. Mr. Mays is going to say that his master plan, now that we've cut it down and said that, is at $5.4 million.
Okay, so, all right, but this is what's available for us to spend. And then it includes what we would have available from the 2012 capital projects.
Correct.
Taking out all of those things that we have to take out.
Correct. Now, what I said a very important thing. We have $6.7 million in capital projects. We have a $5.4 million plan that Mr. Mays is going to talk about. So now we would end the year with $3.9 million in a rainy day fund and $1.3 million cash in the capital projects fund, lower our taxes 11 cents in 2014, and be ready for school in September, August. So is the financial plan viable? Operationally in the general fund, yes. Capital project and rainy day, we are not taking 100% of the money out of any fund to make this thing work, and we will have some contingencies should something arise. We need to buy more portable classrooms, less portable classrooms. We want to speed this up. We want to do this. This is not such a bare bone budget that there's no play in any of it. We'll have play in the rainy day fund, the capital projects fund, and $164,000 worth of play in a $37 million general fund. And that's not much.
Okay, go ahead, Jeff.
As we look at because one of the things that I've done is I've pulled out the CPF fund to start looking at the allocation of projects. And I even called Mr. Tidrow today to ask him a little bit about technology and the technology future. But these buildings we're going to have to maintain our inventory for a while. possibly one we may be able to react with quicker, but is the $5,000 that we have allocated in the CPF going to be able to be enough to maintain them, or we still need operational, because we still got to carry those on our inventory for, what, 2 years, unless we have some educational, so $5,000 per building will be enough.
If not, then we have the emergency maintenance fund that we have to pull out of because it's unforeseen.
Okay.
And the utilities,
Just
the
already
insurance that is already paid out of another line item.
Okay. And I'll digest on this a little bit more, but I noticed when in the email we had to carry over almost $50,000 at Warner. Is our long-term use one of our considerations in the beginning? We had bantered around about doing something with the Warner building. So I don't know if that's future discussions or future long-term plans, but if we're going to spend $50,000 on Warner, I want to make sure that it's.
There's some facade work that the electrical going into that building's ready to do this, and should that happen, we'll have the appropriation to do it. If it doesn't happen, it's not being spent. That's what that money's earmarked for.
Oh, okay. So it
Now,
doesn't necessarily mean that projects have been pulled.
Right, yeah, this isn't a project we're waiting to get done unless we have to. The other thing I want to understand from probably what you're looking at to this, we let a lot of other carryover at Garrison and other buildings revert to cash starting January 1st. Should this plan get approved, I will come to the board and ask for additional appropriation to meet specific needs that Mr. Mays is going to talk about, to take this unappropriated cash that we have in the capital projects and appropriate it with your approval. Same way with the rainy day fund. We now have cash in capital projects and cash in rainy day fund. We have no authority to spend it until the board gives us that authority.
But we have that number in our total.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So.
The only facility that's not listed here is the bus garage, and that, when I think about us as a total master plan, you mentioned the bus garage before. Where does that money come from, and how is it?
We have $2.3 million
Right.
in our transportation fund that should we decide to do anything at the transportation facility, it would be paid for out of those funds.
Well, and at one point, it was mentioned in this whole conversation that Warner, some of that Warner stuff might go there. Can that then be used, can it be from that 2.3 million?
Yes.
So if we moved Warner there, then that would.
We would enhance the facilities at the bus garage.
We might as well talk about all of it at once.
Absolutely.
And not just.
Well, I think part of our responsibility is to look at a couple of years down the road possibly, so.
And consolidating, and, because we happen to know in that neighborhood they could use the space, right?
And will, like the setting, if we should reopen Hibbard, the setting up of the kitchen and so forth, will that come out of what fund?
That would come out of the food service fund?
Well, and she's got quite an extensive plan in here.
Yes. And Mrs. LaRue, as is Mr. Robinson, are very adept at putting plans together on what needs to be done. So if it has to do with food service, we're fortunate enough to have a cash balance there that we don't have to tap the capital projects fund for that. We don't have to tap the capital projects fund for transportation. We get to use it for students.
The $5,000 for Richmond State Hospital, I know, what's that for exactly?
Whatever might come up. It is not earmarked.
That's
Yeah,
not our
that-
building.
If you can see, we've given all year $17,000 basically per elementary building, and that's for movable equipment, if they want to buy a whiteboard, if they want to do that, for some stuff to
Okay.
maintain their building going on. If they need DVRs, they have some money available. Should something arise that's unexpected, that's what emergency maintenance is for.
But that's not our building, correct?
Correct. But we do maintain that building.
Right.
We
Yeah,
don't
that's-
pay utilities.
That's
So
why I
where-
asked, because I was confused.
So where does all the moving expenses come from?
It would come out of capital projects. It would come out of when the time comes, we would put a dollar figure in there, and that would be part of the additional appropriation we would ask out of the capital projects fund, out of that.
Okay, so what other pieces of money that we might have to spend have we not asked you about?
Well, overtime.
Well, that's part of the moving expenses I was thinking
So you've
about.
got, I mean, but, yeah, and that will be part of the overtime.
Portable classrooms.
I beg your pardon?
Portable classrooms.
Portable classrooms, as we get farther into this. I'm going to hopefully not come to you but one time for an additional appropriation in
Okay.
the rainy day into this. I don't want to have, if we keep coming back for that, I haven't done my job.
Well, that's why I asked, what other possible expenses might we have that we ought to at least get out and on the table right now?
Packaging supplies,
To do with the move.
to do with the move, trailers. We may, depending on the cost, we may find it better to go find a semi, not the front end of the semi, but the back end. Buy three of those. So when we pack, we put it in a semi
Oh, to move.
to go like this, and they will be going to 5, 6, 7 buildings, and at the end, sell those trailers. And then the net cost is a lot less than that. But that's some of the stuff that Mr. Robinson's already looking.
And you could also rent those, too.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
Ready to move on to
but I want to say, I'm sure there's stuff we haven't thought of, but there's money available in contingencies to make sure that we do this. We didn't say, let's spend every penny of it, but, oh my goodness, we didn't think of that. Now what are we going to do?
You know, as I was thinking about, there are human expenses. I mean, I'm thinking about some celebrations at schools and some, gatherings and those kind of things. Whether that comes out of a school budget or out of our moves or something, because I don't want to lose sight of the fact that we may have some expenses for, the celebrations or whatever it is that we decide to do at the end or at the beginning.
We will have the resources available, the financial resources available to do that.
Well, and I wanted to mention too that just the transitioning, because there is money attached to that if you do it right.
Are you talking about gathering parents, students, teachers together, kind of? That's kind of what, I like that word transition better than, I couldn't come up with the word I
One of
wanted.
the things we have on the road to middle school that's already been budgeted for the last 3 years.
Well,
Probably not
the
gonna do on the road to
implementation.
middle. So there's money
Right.
appropriated already for next year that just needs to be massaged a little bit. It's already in the budget.
I'd like to call Ron Mays to the podium to discuss with you some of the building projections, the facility projections, the numbers, the costs, timelines.
Transition costs.
He has an interesting and I think important discussion to have with you tonight concerning Crestdale, and I'll just leave it to him. You don't need anything on.
no.
Okay, so I'll get
So what should we be looking at here? Do we have this on paper?
It's got the timeline, the timelines are all on paper.
That thing that I can't read?
Okay, to start off with, we want to have a draft to the board by the board meeting on January the 25th that will show what the redistricting could look like and what the enrollments could look like at the various schools that we're keeping open. I'd like to clarify one thing with Mr. Norris's numbers. He's assuming that everybody at C.R. Richardson or Garrison goes to Charles. All of Garrison to Charles, C.R. to Vale, and Star. That is not a correct assumption. We have to redistrict. He's also assuming, and I don't know where he's coming up with this, that the Vale students would go back to test. Right now, for the last several years, they go to Dennis. And if you take those numbers from Vale, he's correct. You would have that many students at test. But you don't do that now, and we're not looking at doing that in the future. We also know that Westview is low in numbers, and we have a couple open classrooms there, and we will move some students around what Dr. Borf was talking about one time on 27 and on this side of the river. They're closer to go to Westview than they are to Vail or Charles. So we can't assume that we're going to have 795 students at test. Our goal is to run around 650 or so at test and the same amount at Dennis, so that we have an equal amount. And I know in the real world that's not going to work out, but we are going to have a difference, but not a difference like we have today, and not a difference like what he's calling for. So I just wanted to clarify that, and we will have that to you by the 25th.
So,
also,
I'm sorry, you said 650 students for both middle schools?
I'm sorry?
650 for both middle schools?
Yes, that's what our goal is. Also, and that's with taking out logos in early college and putting them in the Hibbert building. Now, if we don't do that, then we do have an additional 150 to 200 students that we would have to make room for in the middle schools. But his numbers didn't include that either. So we're looking at apples to apples. On the buildings that we're going to keep, which is Vail, Star, Westview, and Fairview, there would be no additions or building changes to those particular buildings. There's no need to. They have the classrooms. There would just be some change in nomenclature as far as where the kindergarten goes, first, second, third, fourth, and preschool. So those schools we would not do any construction at. At test, we keep talking about portables, and again, if we can maintain the 25 students per classroom, and which is what they've said, and we look at the number of students we're looking at, we would not require portables at test. But that doesn't mean that in a year or so, as the enrollment develops, that we might have to add 3 or 4 classrooms on to test to alleviate any overcrowding if we had that. Then when we come up to Crestdale, we would be and that's somewhat been in the plan to renovate Crestdale. Okay, so we're looking at a budget of $4 million on Crestdale. We took proposals this afternoon for design firms, and we would like to bring those to you Wednesday night for approval. And one of the urgencies on approval is to meet this end date in August. But we do not have school on next Monday because of Martin Luther King's Day, and that Ron has worked out so that we could get a custodian to work there that day, keep the building open, and then we would trade another day off, and the selected design firm would have the use of the whole building without disrupting any classes, because there's going to be at least a full 8 or 10 hours of going through and reviewing what's there, what they may have to change, and look at an as-built situation. We do not have that opportunity again until President's Weekend. So that's why the urgency of getting the approval. So then we would come back to the board, and these are basically board meetings on February the 8th for approval of the schematic design drawings. On February the 16th, we would have a common wage hearing, and then I would bring that back to you on the 22nd of February for approval. And then March the 14th, in order to meet the schedule, we would probably try to pre-bid windows and heating, ventilating, air conditioning equipment, because they are the long lead items. We would pre-bid those on March the 14th. Then on April the 25th, we would take bids, and the board would approve the contractors, and we would have the final amount. If we put additions on to, which we're looking at maybe 4 classroom additions onto Crestdale, we could start that even though school's in session, and we've done that before, and that would start on May the 7th, on a Monday. The other thing that we've done in the past in the elementary schools, we've made it a learning experience so that when we move dirt, when we dig foundations, when we put steel in, the teachers in the past have brought their students out there and they've watched what they're doing, and we've tried to be there to answer those questions. So that's a learning experience. And then June the 8th, what Mr. Coddington was talking about, trailers, June the 8th, we would have all the equipment, teacher supplies, and everything moved out of the school, Crestdale, into a trailer and keep it right there on site so that once we're ready to move everything back in again, it's right there looking at us. Then we're looking at August, the first to the middle week of August, depending upon when you adopt your schedule for next year, of the school being ready to occupy, and that we would be in session. The way we are going to bid this is that we don't want to pay a premium to try to get the whole building done in 1 year. So we're going to bid it 2 ways. One, with it all being done this calendar year, being completed by August, and then an alternate, add or deduct alternate, to only do half this year and half next summer, and that I think that would not be a savings. I think we can do it all this summer, and we've proven that on all the other elementary schools that we've renovated. So in looking at Dennis is the next one, and we were looking at around $600,000 for Dennis. We've changed our cost projections, and again on February the 8th, the board meeting, you're going to be busy. We would like to bring schematic drawings for a gymnasium and cafeteria, remodeling the cafeteria and providing a new gym. And what our schedule would be on that would be that the board on April the 25th would approve the drawings, and then we would bid that, and the June the 11th we would be getting contractor, or on May the 23rd we'd be getting contractors approved, and then on June the 11th construction would start when school's out. And the goal there would be to have the cafeteria, get the serving line out of the hallway. When we walked through there the other day, there was bread storage and all kinds of supplies in that hallway, and it is a fire exit issue. So we would have the cafeteria ready for next fall. We would have the gymnasium completed so that we could start the winter gym classes and the winter sports program in the new gym. I'm hoping that over spring break we could have the lighting changed in the hallways. Amen. And when we took a little tour today, we looked at test, and I said, look at this hallway and think about Dennis, and there's quite a difference between the lighting levels. And then next summer we would do some painting in Dennis. So there's a lot for the board to work on there. On Hibbard, on February the 8th, again, we would like to come back with a schematic drawing showing you what the classrooms are going to be, where they're going to be located, and how we're going to use that building. On February the 13th, Ron is going to have a group come in, and we're going to assess all the heating and air conditioning units, bring those up to date, and repair them as required, and then we would insulate and re-insulate all the piping so that we do not have the problems there that we have now. Then on March, we would start demolition of the ceilings, and on March the 30th, we would have all the demolition out. We would have all of the supplies and storage equipment that are in there, we would have that out so that on April the 2nd, we could start putting back construction items like casework, floors, lights, and ceilings. And then on June the 11th, this is important, we would want it done by then, because Ron's going to be so busy moving everybody this summer that we want it ready so that if we decide to move logos there, we can move them out at Test and directly in their classroom in Hibbard. So it would be totally complete and ready, and we don't have any re-moving around. And then that if we put life skills at Hibbard, we would move that on the 18th of June because what I was thinking is all those cabinets that are fairly new at Test, we'll just pick them up and we'll move them and reuse those back at Hibbard, which would then give Test then 3 classrooms that are the typical size of the classrooms at Test. Now, when you walk in there now, you see walls and cabinets and all that. You can't visualize that would be a regularly sized classroom, and that's what we would do. And we would look at about $800,000 on what we would do at Hibbard. We want to rework with a canopy on the east end of the building, 2nd floor, so that we can, that's where, with some regrading and things on the football field, we hope to have parking and a bus drop-off, and the students would come into the 2nd floor level. On the 1st floor level, we are looking at opening up that office like we've done at the other schools and make it more friendly, user-friendly, excuse me, and we would put another set of doors on the outside there on the south side, because right now when you open the doors, all that dust, dirt, and wind blows right through the building. So we would take care of that configuration. We would also have Hibbard ready so that when we moved the offices from Baxter, they would pick up at Baxter and move right into Hibbard and start working the minute that we move in there, because it's key that we have that building ready before school is out so that we can make those transitions. If we elect to do something at Baxter this year, on June the 11th again, we would move the furniture from Baxter to Hibbard. On June the 18th, we would start installing the security devices that we need on all the doors to make that a secured building, and it would also be allowed by Homeland Security codes that we would have to follow those requirements, and then that we would do any minor painting that would be required to bring that building up, and that by July the 2nd, then Baxter would be ready and ready for use for the August school year. So they're aggressive plans, but what I was trying to show you is that it can be done, and it has been done. We just have to set the schedule and follow it.
Pat, I had a question back at Crestdale. As we've remodeled other buildings, teachers have been really instrumental in thinking about how the buildings would look and what would happen. And as I think about Crestdale, it won't be just the teachers who are there. There more than likely will be some other teachers from some other places going there. And I want to make sure that Crestdale follows, because I look at Charles and Vale and Westview and Fairview and all of those, the teachers were really a very important voice in how to make sure that happens with even people who might be coming there.
And we want to do that, and we would schedule those meetings when we get the floor plan ready with the staff. We've already been talking to the media center on what what she wants and what her needs are. And we've already talked to her about maybe making her space just a little smaller, maybe taking 5 or 8 feet out of there, because we want to make the entrance a secure entrance like we've done or tried to do at the other schools, where the students can go in and out the main doors, but once they're in the building, those main doors are locked, and the only way any other people can get into the building is a separate door that takes them right by the office, so that they don't have that free access to the building. And we do want to talk to the staff about the workroom, about where we are locating things. So you are right, that they would be involved in that.
I just want to make sure, because that means we have some other things, not just approving all the things that you said, but some other decisions we may have to make so that those other decisions can be made so that the faculty will be known.
Right. We've also been talking and started conversations with the life skill people, with the early college people, and we're going to start talking on the logos to arrange the rooms the way we want to arrange them at Hibbert, and they will all have a voice in on what we're doing, because they have to buy into it for it to be successful.
Just want to make sure we don't.
Right. No, we won't go around that.
I wanted to ask a question about opening up these offices, and this is for any school, because if we have to have a lockdown and there are students in the office, how do you have a lockdown with an office open?
That's a good question. I'm not sure on that.
Yeah, because it could be from the inside. That concerns me for safety reasons.
Would we ever have so many that we couldn't find secure places within the office?
Well, if you have to do it quickly.
There's one way of doing that.
I'm thinking the conference room and the principal's office.
You could put electric locks on certain doors that lead into that office, and the main doors, so that we are secured. We are secured.
Jeff?
Going back to the projected construction cost for the master planning, I see that we've already saved $100,000 on Dennis. We went from $700,000 to $600,000.
Right.
The $4 million project that you have budgeted for Crestdale?
Yes.
Does that number include the $480,000 for the potential 4 classrooms that we're going to possibly add?
Yes.
So that's included.
Yes. Now you have to realize, I know it's a couple years ago or several years ago, we renovated Fairview, and we had an extensive addition put on both ends. And we renovated several rooms inside the building, and that ran $3.9 million. So Crestdale isn't as much renovation, and certainly not enough additions as what we did at Fairview. We've run the numbers, and that's what we are looking at now. Quite honestly, one of the design firms, what we got a proposal today, thought that it should be 4.9. But the other design firms, when we told them what the proposals were, and after their walkthrough, they felt comfortable with meeting that cost.
Now, and just so I have my numbers, the floor plan that we just received tonight, which is the same one we got in our Friday update, but Crestdale is projected. The 331 student number is projected number at the time if we approve the master plan recommendation. So, and Charles is projected at 483. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is I know we're using a fixed amount per square foot when we plan our renovation and our additions. If we have once we have construction on site, there's our fixed cost. Some of that may be cheaper for us to add and make 6 rooms there, since we've already got it's already going to be messed up. It's already going to be under construction. So I guess.
And put more students there.
Right. as a consideration as we're looking at balancing the enrollment, balancing the schools, because one of the things that I was thinking about is if we do approve and go pre-K through 4, I think it would benefit us to do that at all elementaries all at once. So, Charles, is the other question that we have as far as possibly the need for portable classrooms or future additions. So I guess I kind of just bring that up as not for debate, but maybe thought that
That's a good point.
maybe that might be a consideration that.
It's less expensive than going back again. If we
Right. I mean, we're already going to go through the bid process. You know, the Crestdale has already been decided to be slated for renovation. If 2 or 4 classrooms, if they need to be added, I guess I would question, maybe it would be wise to consider that now.
That's a good
Yeah,
point.
makes sense.
So, and the other, because I see that we have a Charles Elementary future classrooms expense of 4 to 6 classrooms, which we have and I know these are just projected possibles, not necessarily reality, but, so that's $1 million, that's $960,000. Test, it almost sounds like test that we're going in through next year. You're thinking that we don't have to add portable classrooms
Right.
to get them by
Right.
through the next calendar year?
That's right, that's right. And see what the enrollment does. See, one of the questions we have, we're not sure how many students, with logos, and how many are going to go to Hibbert, and whether the 7th graders that are 7th graders now will be in the 8th grade, how they feel about going to Hibbert. We know that we'll pick up the 5th and 6th graders, and the new 4th graders going in, it would be 5th, 6th, and 7th graders. We're not sure what that new 8th grade group will do.
Was the Logos model expected to go from 6-8 to 5-8 as well?
Yes.
Yes, it's 5-8.
'Cause that's been a little confusion out in the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely is an aggressive schedule.
It is, and we have,
Buy local.
we have to meet all those dates.
Yeah.
Not much.
There's no leeway.
So the portable classroom piece of that, if we decide that we need to do that, we can make those decisions in
Yes.
late
And we
late
can-
June, early July. be
We can
okay?
make those hopefully before that, because we get a handle on enrollment, and that once we get the redistricting, we'll know how close we are to having to make those decisions.
So what's the ideal time to make that decision? 3 months, 4 months I don't know how long it takes to get a portable
I
classroom
would say
set in and set up.
hopefully by spring break, we're in that mode right there.
So by April.
Yeah. And Bob, Mr. Contington has mentioned that we don't necessarily have to buy new ones, that he knows out there that there are refurbished ones, and there is a rental program. So, I mean, and we've had portables before, as I've said. We've had them at Charles when we did the addition. We had them at Vale when we did the addition. We just moved them around and about wore them out. And then we also moved these storage trailers around from site to site. So this isn't any new ground that we're plowing. It's just what we've done in the past.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Fun.
As we're looking at this whole project, we're also looking at things other than just buildings and finance, fiscal and facility.
Please.
We're looking also at education and support. And key to that would be the sustainability of the Safe Schools, Healthy Students grant. What I'd like to do is have Mr. Millis, Misty Hollis isn't here. She is planning to be here yet this evening if possible, but she's not here now. So Mr. Millis is prepared, and Mr. Coddington, to talk about the sustainability efforts that have been discussed today and what that might look like.
Last spring, we had a committee. We had a committee assigned to look at sustainability for the Safe Schools and Healthy Students grant. And on that committee, we had Jeff Kappa from the Sheriff's Department, Rob Bachmeyer from Centerstone, and Misty, myself, and some people in and out. Bruce Daggy gave input at times in terms of the Boys Club. We looked at data that was available. Some of you attended some of those meetings where that data was shared, and then down to $303,511. In that, one item is included that has not been a part of the grant, and that is the attendance officer. We have supported the attendance officer through the state Safe Schools drug-free grant and the remediation grant. The drug-free grant's been completely eliminated, and the remediation grant has been, I'd say 80% of that has been taken away in the last few years. So we really need to maintain that for services for ISTEP. So that's kind of just a broad summary of that. Mr. Coddington and then Mrs. Hollis returns. She can give you some more insights into that. But what I would say is that we felt all of those things have produced results, both academic and also in the climate and improvement in our buildings. There are challenges that are apparent in the data, but we feel like we've made some headway in some of those.
On the school resource officers, how many do we have now?
We currently have 3, and that would provide for 2, and we would share, they would work a schedule where the middle school or intermediate schools would also receive some of their time.
2 full-time?
2 full-time.
Mr. Coddington has something to add on that.
We're paying for 2 out of the Safe Schools grant. We have 3 officers now, but a third of each office, minimum of 2 hours a day, is spent in the lunchroom, and lunchroom is paying. So we will sustain the one theory, two hours a day, but it's only an additional to the general fund of $82,000 because we're already covering 1 FTE out of the lunchroom.
Same with the attendance officers. Don't we have more than 1 attendance officer also?
We do.
Will we just be keeping 1, or?
This is the one we're talking about. I don't know that we have the other one. We have 2, do we not?
We do. We have Vegas and Rod Maddox, and the one was paid out of the ARA dollars, and so I don't know that one will be sustained.
We are not talking about that one.
Okay.
Pat? The behavior coaches, that is Marcus Jewett, and that's that.
Yeah,
I don't know their titles.
Right.
Those are the behavior coaches, and we found a way that we could sustain those 2 through Title II, through professional development, because 100% of what they do is work with teachers in implementing positive behavior supports and professional development.
And there are how many of those?
2.
2 of those.
I want to go back to the resource officers. So if some of it's paid out of cafeteria, so we would still have 3.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Well, the reason I'm asking that is because we're opening up another 5 through 8 if we approve this plan, and also we're opening an alternative school program in addition to the state hospital program, and we're really going to need them.
Yes. And we really understand that.
I hadn't thought about that, the
Yes.
alternative school.
Yeah.
It's not in addition to the state hospital, though, right?
No,
We haven't had
that
one.
is the state hospital.
This,
In one facility.
right.
Yeah, but it's still
I see what you're
additional,
saying.
More
Extra
kids.
people.
more
is what
kids you
you're
have to
saying.
deal with.
I got you.
Yeah.
Jeff?
I'm just trying to get my timing on this piece of this. The Safe Students Grant expires at the end of 2012.
Yeah.
So services, basically as we know them, will stay the same through 12/31?
For the most part.
So these changes that we are talking about here and the services that we're going to keep here we were talking about for January of 2013.
That's correct.
That's right.
And so
That's why it
kind of-
shows in our income and expense analysis, zero expense to the general fund for
Right.
2012.
Because I noticed that Birth to 5, office staff, and transportation, which is currently funded, I guess we're assuming that they're falling completely out of this.
They wouldn't be funded through the general fund of the Richmond Community Schools.
And did you say we would have one attendance officer instead of two?
Oh, I think you said both, didn't you? Just one?
No, one.
Just the one.
Just the one.
One.
Wow.
Linda?
I'm sorry.
I would be interested to know how the principals arrived at thinking that they could do with 1/2 less custodian per building, knowing that there are going to be more students probably in each building, and
This was independent of the master plan. This had to do with the sustainability piece. And the principals that took this very seriously by saying, any cuts, I want them away from the classroom. So we came up with a way, and we've talked to Mr. Robinson, we will have to stagger the two remaining. We have 2.5 people per building in the elementary school. We'll have to stagger the schedules differently. Currently, I believe one comes in at 6, one comes in at 3, and then there's 1.5 people. One comes in at 3 from 3 to 7, and one from 3 to 11. We would back that up. Probably have the first person come in at 5, and we'd have to have a stagger. While we've got more students, it's the same square footage, basically, that we're talking about. We didn't say this would be easy. We didn't say they wanted to do it. But to keep it away from the classroom, to get these vital services, that was almost unanimously what they said they would have to do to maintain the integrity of some of the good work these people, as are these custodians doing good work. It's just, we have choices we have to make now.
Debbie.
okay, I guess what I am having a hard time with is today when we were at the middle school, I'm realizing that perhaps some of our offerings are not what they need to be. And so what I'm having a hard time with is separating, and it seems as though we need to be looking at this not as separate, but as together.
Are you talking
with
about the art and music and so forth?
whatever the needs might be
Okay.
for our staff. That's, and to meet the needs of our kids. And so, because when we look at the whole picture, it could be that maybe we don't need, maybe we would need something other than, maybe we can't sustain 2 behavior coaches because we need to do something else. So I'm just having a hard time with separating.
Well, nothing is static in this. I think the important point made last conversation, I believe Dixie brought it up, was that this whole first year is going to be a transition year. And we're going to find that in that transition process, we may not have it as fine-tuned as it needs to be. So it could very well be that what you're talking about will require some changes in the upcoming year. And that's also why we've not planned to deplete the rainy day fund. It may be that in year 1, during that transition, we have some staff needs that we're not going to be able to eliminate, but that in year 2, we can plan to economize on by making some cuts in other ways. So it's not like we have foreseen everything, but I think we have the wherewithal to meet the challenges that you're talking about.
We ought to have, before we, I know, Suzanne, well, explain what you're talking about. Because what we were talking about today was that not all kids, not as many kids in middle school get art, music, and PE as often as we thought they might, and that, so, let's just say that's what you were referring to.
Right.
Are you saying that currently, or, okay.
Right. We've been very adamant about keeping our elementary creative arts. That's been something that I think all of us have supported. And then we go to the middle school and we find that those students are not getting art, music. Well, they get probably music more so than they get art and physical education. And we kind of found that as in a time when we talk about the health of our students and so forth, and here we are not providing physical education for our middle school students who are obviously
But not as much.
Right.
We're provided,
Not as
and I
much.
remember the discussion. It all came about when we went to trimesters and we went to the longer class periods because they couldn't take as many things during the day, and so it's a scheduling issue. However, that starts to balance because some kids, the behavior may not be as bad if they had more opportunities to do that. So I didn't mean to interrupt what you were saying, Suzanne, but
I didn't say anything.
It's how these dominoes, they all fit together. It's just one big piece that we have to think about.
Jeff, and then Suzanne.
The Centerstone and the community schools, I guess on the community schools, I've heard very loud and clear from parents, from teachers, from administrators that that's an extremely valuable program. So are we keeping the same level of service in each building, a full-time CIS, or are we going to reduce the hours? And I guess the Centerstone I'm a little fuzzier on, but then I guess with that question, we're not showing all of the resource officers being out of the general fund either. So are there other revenue streams that will cover those additional resources if we need them?
Well, yes, but we're not necessarily in control of some of that. The Centerstone, any kind of mental health service, also has access to some Medicaid funds that we don't necessarily have access to. So exactly how much that would be is dependent on the caseload that they develop. Now, the answer to your question, the easy answer to your question is no, these aren't the services that we have right now. To exactly what extent we would have services per hour, that's in conversation with the partner providers. It could also be that they have some external funding sources besides Medicaid. For example, communities and schools, when we talked about this, talked about there would be school dollars, and then they're looking for external dollars to provide more hours.
Some of that's to be determined then.
Yeah.
But the goal is still to provide those full-time services at the building level.
Well, that would be our goal. The goal is to provide services. Whether it looks like the full-time that we're accustomed to, we can't say yet.
And we also have used some of our parent involvement dollars through Title I. It's not a large amount, but each school, I think, uses $1,000 of their parent involvement dollars to support communities in schools. So we'll continue to do that.
Mm-hmm. Suzanne?
I just wanted to say that I have been overwhelmed with the number of faculty and staff that have spoken to me after the last meeting about they're brewing with ideas and creative ways to make things work, and they're kind of waiting for us to decide, I think, in a way. They were talking to me about creative ways to deal with the fine arts and stuff in the middle schools, but are kind of waiting for us to decide before they make their case for the schedule change and some of those kinds of things. And then opportunities for growth and solutions for things. So I think there's some people out there that are chomping at the bit to really help deal with and fix those things. And I just wanted to including the gym at Dennis. I mean, I've just heard all kinds of ideas from different people.
Yeah,
and
that's a good point.
They're saying, yeah, as soon as we find out which way the board goes, this is the case we're going to make.
Almost all the employee groups are looking at ways to make this work.
Yeah.
And I appreciate what they're doing.
creatively,
But I say not just make it work. That's the thing that fascinates me, is it's not just like deal with it. They're excited because this will make it better, I guess. And I've been bowled away by that.
And we are trying to hold them off.
I feel for them, though, because I'm first of all impressed that they're spending that time, and then it's just funny because they're ready to go. They're like, I think
So's
some of
the
them even
public.
have it
A
on
lot of the
paper,
public,
and
yeah.
so it's good
So
stuff.
am I, so does that make any difference?
Alan?
Well, we also have personnel implications to this, and I wanted Mrs. Stewart and Dr. Parker to talk a little bit about some of the personnel issues that we face. Some of those would be reassignments, some of those would be transfers, displaced teachers, et cetera. Mrs. Stewart, go ahead.
Now, do we have this document?
There's not a, yes, you do. Yes, you do. Staffing guidelines.
Staffing guidelines. Oh, okay. Staff transfer? Got it, okay. I was looking under personnel. Sorry.
For the 2012-13 school year, if the board decides to go with the master plan as it was presented, there will be teachers who are displaced as we move from K-6 elementary buildings to K-4 primary buildings and pre-K primary buildings and 5-8 intermediate buildings. There will be teachers at all of our elementary schools who are displaced. And knowing that, we've done some preliminary work, and I think you'll notice that document has boldly written across that there's a watermark that says draft. We have had input from principals, and we took it to discussion with teachers once. We will do that again, and the REA has pledged to work with us to finalize plans when that time comes. We will have teachers displaced from each building, and then there will be some reassignment along the way. So with the master plan stated as it was, the first thing that we would, well, not the first thing necessarily, but the staff for Logos, intermediate life skills, that's grades 5 through 8, and early college programs would be transferred intact to the Hibbard building. Primary life skills, or pre-K-4 teachers, the primary life skills teachers currently at Highland will move to Crestdale. The elementary creative arts, library media specialists, and special education teachers will be assigned with central office administration and input from principals, but we'll take care of that here. 5th and 6th grade position openings created in the intermediate buildings will be first reserved for individuals who currently teach 5th and 6th grade, and to the degree possible, current staff displaced will be given first consideration for openings to which students from their buildings will be attending. Okay? And then building level staffing needs will be determined at the district level. That's something that we are typically doing this time of year anyway. And that includes positions created as a result of restructuring. And by that we mean additional pre-K-4 classes in our elementary buildings, and then the 5th and 6th grade in the intermediate buildings. And then we'll meet with displaced teachers. We'll determine who in each building will be displaced. We'll provide displaced teachers with a list of openings and have teachers select 3 possible choices from the openings, and we will make every effort to honor teacher choice where possible, but we'll take other factors into consideration also. Obviously, teacher certification has to be the priority, we have to have teachers appropriately licensed. And then we will look at the number of years of experience at the requested grade level, and we'll also use input from building administrators to consider the placement of teachers. Ultimately, all placements will be made with primary consideration after certification, and that is to the needs of students. And there have been questions about, I want to make a change, but I want to go to a different building, but I really wouldn't be impacted. We'll still have the opportunity for teachers who are interested in making transfers to another building. We'll have that, hopefully we'll have that opportunity available. There will be a process where they'll put in writing their desire to transfer and provide that to our office. And we'll work with people to the extent that we can.
How does this fit with the timing of the placement of administrators? Because there are
we would like to get that done first.
On the
Have administrative placement.
I saw that.
timeline, we have administrators to be assigned first.
Soon. You didn't say that. I just want to
Oh.
make sure because that will make a difference.
Right.
Possible transfers
just-
or other stuff.
My timeline here, our timeline here, obviously may have to be adjusted. Okay? And we'd like to have teachers who plan to retire get that to us prior to by March 1st, and that's typical timeline.
Yeah.
And I think it bears repeating. I know we've said this before, but especially since this is being recorded and publicized later, I think it bears repeating that the staffs at the buildings where we've discussed these building closures have said, from building to building, is there a way that a policy can be designed or a procedure can be designed that will send us with the students in those buildings so that there are familiar faces in the buildings where our students will be. And I think that is so important because our teachers sometimes get a bad rap for being so possessed by seniority in decision-making, and that is not what our teachers have asked for. So I just want to, I think it's important that people understand their first concern are the students.
Well, and we've heard over and over from parents that's what they want too. They love their teachers. They want their teachers with
The
their
interesting
students.
piece
so
will
that's
be
really great.
after we get the possible boundary shifts. Not all kids from one school will go to a school,
Could be
and
two
they'll
different
be
directions.
dispersed. And so that then says to the placement of faculty, maybe we do have more
Divvy some up.
divvy. I hadn't used that word. Yeah, because if we want them to be there where the kids are, it'd be different.
I do want to add, just so that we keep in mind, that we will go through this process and we will make placements. But this process will not preclude a later reduction in force should that be necessary.
Right.
If we don't get the appropriate or enough resignations and retirements, we may in fact have to have a RIF list.
Or enrollment, yeah.
Or
Go the other way.
if the enrollment in our schools increases, we may have to add teachers.
How are you, I understand the regular classroom teachers. So how are the other staff going to be handled? Teachers, the creative arts and librarian, media specialists, and how is that going to work?
We'll make those assignments from here, which is what we've done. In the past several years, we've assigned the creative arts in the curriculum office.
Your thought is, though, that maybe those positions, there wouldn't be as many creative arts positions, and what happens to
I
those
see what you're
teachers?
saying. I'm sorry. Linda, some of our creative arts teachers, some of them have other licensing, and to the degree possible, we'll place them.
And what about
areas in which they're certified.
our non-certified staff? How is that going to?
Well, we'll look at attendance, who's had good patterns of attendance. We'll look at job performance. We'll look at their customer service focus. Are they doing whatever it takes? So we'll look at those performance issues also. And then we'll look at years of service. Consider
When will
that.
those people know?
Well, lots of things have to happen first. We have to have the numbers of students projected in classes. And for paraprofessionals, typically we're hiring every year. Well, you see it. You get that about every board meeting we have. So paraprofessionals, I think, will be able to place.
Secretaries once building administrators.
Secretaries, once we get building administrators placed. Environmental service, we'll be working with Mr. Robinson and Mr. Coddington. We haven't, well, I won't say we haven't forgotten. The intent is to be certain that we include all staff as we're going through this process.
And we've met with, Mr. Robinson had a meeting with building level environmental services, and we've met with them in December, told him that seniority would be a play in it, but it's not going to be, it'll be one of the factors that we play with. So we've had some talk, and like I say, everybody's waiting to say, if we're going to do it, then let us be a part of the process, and let us know as soon as possible.
Yes, that's what I was saying. I just want us to be sensitive
Absolutely.
to those people who may not be employed with us anymore, and
Well,
that's tough.
It is hard.
and it's kind of the way of the world right now. My question goes back to the creative arts and all of that. There will be more students at the middle school, at the intermediate schools, and then we have Hibbard. And so how will we kind of balance all of that? Because now the creative arts and music, they take care of only so many students at the intermediate, and there are going to be more students, and yet we want to make sure they have the offering, especially because if 5th and 6th graders were still back in the elementary, they would have some self-contained art and music. So you see my question? I don't quite know how to ask the question, except
Some of them be moving to the intermediates is what you're asking.
exactly. Can we use some of those creative arts in intermediate and making sure we have the level of that service sustained?
You'll see some curriculum recommendations
Good.
that will change or be adapted as a result of the building plan. Once we know what that design looks like, you'll see some curriculum revisions.
Okay, that question didn't come out clearly, and I apologize.
That's
And
okay.
Dixie.
are we going to talk about technology?
I do have that on the list.
Okay, because I have a question that we came up with today, we were wondering about.
Yeah. Title I, there will be a significant change to our Title I program.
Yeah, as we begin to think of in terms of primary and intermediate schools as opposed to elementary and middle schools, we need to think about how we get services to students who have previously had services. As we look at having 5th and 6th grade in the intermediate schools, those students have historically received Title I services. However, in Richmond Community Schools, through grade span grouping, we have not typically served our middle schools through Title I. We added Dennis Middle School for this school year because we were required to do so because they exceeded that 75% threshold. But knowing that we're going to send a significant number of elementary students to those intermediate schools, we wanted to look at how do we get services to those students and pick up Test Middle School as a Title I school. And so it's not an exact science. We looked at where our students are now. I literally had a spreadsheet and took the boxes and moved the boxes of grades and the number of kids in the grades to the schools that we anticipate they will be attending, and looked at within those students, how many of those students were free and reduced price lunch students, to kind of get an idea of what the poverty levels at those buildings might look like next year. Those aren't exact numbers that I've provided. They're just based on current boundaries. There probably will be some significant changes once we know what the exact redistricting looks like. But we have to, through Title I, we have to rank order our schools from highest poverty to lowest poverty and serve them in that order. We can give all students the same per pupil amount, or we can stagger those amounts, but we have to ensure that the higher poverty schools get an amount at least equal to the schools that are below it. They can't get a lower per pupil amount. And so I looked at what the funding was for this year and tried to project out what it would look like next year if the schools do indeed end up in this rank order and do indeed have these number of students. Because we've talked about the Hibbard building at this point being a program as opposed to a school, those kids are included in their home schools. And so half of them are included with Dennis and half of them are included with Test to generate the funds. The other thing that I need to add is for the first time next year, our funding will be based on the 2010 census as opposed to the 2000 census, and I can't really anticipate how that might impact our overall funding. But our funding has been fairly stable over the last 7 to 8 years. We've had a few decreases, but nothing significant. And so if our funding remains stable, these are just some projected allocations to try to keep funding at least stable for our schools and hopefully see it go up in those schools with high poverty where they're going to be adding more students. And so as you can see when you look at this, I don't know if you can pull this up, it was a part of the master plan, but I don't know that anyone needs to see it. Vail would see an increase of about $56,000 in their overall allocation, which means they would be able to maintain services that they've been able to provide. Their staffing wouldn't change. In fact, they might be able to add some staffing. Fairview would see a slight decrease because they actually have a decrease in student number from this year. And Elizabeth Star Academy would see an increase of about $10,000. Crestdale would see an increase of about $38,000. Dennis would see an increase of about $60,000 because we're adding 2 additional grade levels there. Dennis, or Test, which has had no funding, would receive an allocation of around $244,000. Westview would actually see a slight decrease in funding, again, because they would have a decrease in students. And again, once redistricting happens, that may change. And Charles would see about a $20,000 increase in funding. The dollars are generated based on the students who are in poverty in your school. And so if you have a higher poverty school, you are funded for more students, which is why those schools receive more money. And we have historically in Richmond Community Schools given those schools that have a very high poverty rate a higher per pupil amount, because having a 90% poverty or a 98% poverty rate in your school isn't just to double the problem of having a 50% poverty rate. It's sort of a synergistic effect, and we have to provide a greater level of services for those students to support them. So that's how we've done it. Any questions about Title I?
And the money pays for?
Right now, schools use their school improvement planning process to create their Title I plans. And so schools use those funds to match the needs that they identify in that comprehensive needs assessment. We have been a little bit directive at the district level in terms of what we want them to spend those dollars on. We've asked that they support a full-time instructional coach in each of the elementary schools. Now, we have 9 of those people now, and we'll be going down to 6, and so that does impact staffing. If there aren't retirements, some people will be reassigned. However, by the addition of a middle school title building, we will have some openings probably for instructional coaches at the middle school level if any of those people would be interested in moving. We've already had one instructional coach say, I want to go back to the classroom, so we're hoping not to displace too many of those folks. Some of the schools have used those dollars to purchase interventionists, and they will still be able to do that based on this funding. So I'm not anticipating any loss of personnel in Title I. Yeah.
I also wanted to let you know that the transition the transition planning that we've talked about, the affective point of the transition planning. We've begun discussing that with the principals, and you don't have this document. It's a pretty rough document. It's just a list of concerns. But one of those concerns was, how do we close schools with appropriate celebration and reorganization of the new schools almost simultaneously? And we've talked about the idea of having pen pals. We've talked about picnics. Once we know where students would be going, the principals talked about ways of linking those students to their future schools, teachers to their future schools as well. We talked about, how do you close a building without affecting students in terms of packing up and moving? And the idea was, in fact, I think Mrs. Morgeson brought it up as she was talking about some of her experience, that some students associate packing up and boxes in the halls with some traumatic or regretful, sorrowful experiences they've had in leaving places. And so what we talked about the other day with the principals was how can we avoid that? And one of the principals commented that one of the ways that we could do it, and Bob Coddington talked about that already, would be to have some trailers available, that if teachers are wanting to work ahead, we can get those boxes out of the building so that they're not constantly reminding both the teachers, parents, and students of what's happening. We also talked about, the principals are wanting to make this transition happen as effortlessly as possible too, but they also are concerned about where they're going to be assigned. We know that there's going to be some reassignments. They would like to have that information, and we also have principals who have begun talking to their staffs about what a program might look like here or there, what the building might look like if it's to be used as this. They're not trying to get out in front of the decision, but they are trying to prepare for that decision, and you'll hear some noise like that once in a while in the upcoming days. They had some interesting questions. Many of those questions were sort of like Dan Norris's questions. Some of those are easy to address, and others are going to require some group work, and we'd like to have some of those questions resolved before spring break. So transitioning discussions are happening throughout the district. Transitioning in technology plans are also taking place, and Rob Tidrow included in this packet some of the transition planning that he's doing right now, but I've asked him to discuss that just a bit with you, particularly if you have any questions on that.
Sure. As you can see in the transition plan, I've broken it down to the individual buildings. Some of them are duplicated notes because we'll do the same process in each of the buildings. But, for example, we'll go into Hibbard. We'll build that up where we need to. For example, if you go in there now, we have a network system, but it's we've reallocated some of that equipment to other buildings as needed. So we'll come back and rebuild that network as necessary, as well as say the phone system. Some of that hardware we could reallocate in the past 2 or 3 years to other buildings. We can now rebuild that. We'll also be able to move teachers and so forth back into that building, but also along with Ron Mays and Mr. Robinson, we'll be going in there and updating the network infrastructure to each classroom, make sure that they have appropriate, say, network drops and phone drops and so forth. We'll do the same thing at Test, Dennis, and Crestdale. The key here is that we want to make sure that each of the teachers moving or being displaced from a building will have the equipment they have now when they go to a new building. It's important to note, though, that say a teacher now has a set of student computers in their classroom, we will move those to the appropriate building to maintain our 2-to-1 student to computer ratio. So, and that's going to be based on our enrollment numbers, based on maybe building administrators' needs and so forth. Once it's inside the buildings, then the administrators at the building will also have key input on where those devices will go. Some administrators want maybe 3 per classroom, some maybe want 5 here, maybe 2 here based on curriculum needs, maybe some RTI efforts and so forth. So we move it based on what the teacher has now, but then once we get in the buildings, we'll have the administrators' input as well. We see it similar to any other move we've done in the past, say when we transitioned Discovery over to STAR. We made sure that those teachers took their equipment with them and to their new classrooms. We had it done with the alternative high school when they moved from the Hibbert building downstairs at the high school. We made sure that their equipment was there, ready for day one. We had a similar situation with when we moved adult education out of Hibbert over to the Warner building. We were able to outfit them, in fact, maybe upgrade them a little bit better equipment. So. One of the things we have to keep in mind, though, when we do move some of the equipment is how it's funded. Say Title I funds smart boards. We have to make sure that that smart board that was funded by that fund gets into a building that is Title I, for example. So we can't just move that and put it any place we want. We have to pay attention to those needs and those requirements, federal or state or grants. So,
but every elementary is Title I, right?
Yeah, but if we don't pick up tests, then that creates an issue for a 5th and 6th grade teacher who has a smart board.
That's an issue. So
don't want to do that.
And Dr. Clark has thought about that. We've talked about that quite a bit. So some of the we have an inventory of what every teacher has in their classroom right now, whether it's a device you can see on the wall, a computer, or maybe even a small device, say an iPad or iPod Touch, maybe a portable tablet and so forth. That equipment they're going to have, and they'll move with them. So we want to make sure that that transition is seamless for them, because even though technology is kind of seen as impersonal, you do get attached to your equipment that you've learned, and we've spent some time with professional development, and you're comfortable with that environment. You don't want to go back to the old ways, so we want to make sure that's seamless.
Well, our question today, because if we move the 5th and 6th graders into the middle schools, currently there's one computer lab with the use of another one that they have. We were speaking of test at the time, but it will be all 3 places on testing. To get it done in the testing window of time, we're going to need an additional computer lab.
Right. And you're talking about test or dentist, right? This spring, we're going to have 101 computers being used for I-STEP testing. And that includes, let's look at tests. They've got a library computer lab. They have our corporate lab, which is a training lab. I think Mr. Norris was talking about they're using that for some APNGEA training as well. They'll have that to use. We're outfitting the tech lab right now, which is Mr. Kaluger's lab. It's kind of on that north side. He'll have 30 computers in there. I think now he's in the 2017 range. But we've looked at that. By the middle of February, we'll have that outfitted so that we'll have additional resources for I-STEP. And then we have the family consumer science area. Right now, those labs have 28 computers. 12 of them are dedicated to that fax module, which we don't like to interrupt because there's a lot of configuration going on there. But there's 16 computers in that lab that we can use for maybe those that need additional time because of IEPs, maybe those that had attendance problems that week. So those are so you don't take up a whole lab for people that have those needs. The dentist, we have 106 computers that they'll be able to use, including the library lab, Project Lead the Way. Mr. Murray has that. We can use that for I-STEP testing. We've got the second floor lab, which is just a plain computer lab, which early college uses, but is also available for the whole school, and they use that throughout the day. Again, the fax lab is 16 that can be used by anybody, and 12 kind of off limits, but 16 that can be used for testing. So, and I haven't even discussed that we have 2 new laptop carts that I talked to Mr. Slifer about for those buildings that will be introduced by the end of this month which will be state-of-the-art laptops that they can also use if they want to for I-STEP testing, and there'd be no problem using those. So we're talking 161 computers now at test and 166 that could be used for testing for those 4 grades, because it'll be 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th and 8th. So,
But the testing, I mean, if you have like 16 here and 12 someplace else, that
no, it would
complicates.
Right. What happens in the consumer science department is they have computers on the outside of the wall, and then in the middle they have computers devoted to the consumer science software. And we don't like to reconfigure those. There's a lot of time involved with that. But we would have those 16 available on the outside for those two labs. And in fact, they used them last year, I believe, at Dennis for some of those overruns. So
with the numbers, they would be able to complete the testing and anything else that goes with it in the time frame.
Right. That's why we're looking at building additional
Online testing,
resources.
they give us an expanded window.
Okay.
Right. And then in the elementary levels, you're only going to be testing 2 grades, 3rd and 4th grade. Right now, we're doing 4 grades, or we'll be doing 4, but there's no problem there. So.
Have we moved everybody now to computer testing for Acuity, and are there still paper and pencil?
Yeah, Acuity is all online.
Okay.
And the high school's going to be doing the UCA is all online this
Early
year.
college, right.
Okay.
And of course.
Wow.
Everything's online.
Any other questions on the technology transition? Question that came up last week was focusing on mobility and how we're going to reduce the problem of mobility, because that was a concern, especially in our assumptions. What I can say is that the plan itself addresses mobility in its own way. For example, when you create a larger geographical area for any school, you have reduced, to some extent, the problem that mobility creates, to the extent that people move within that geographical boundary. If you create a larger one, they have more room to move without affecting where their child goes to school. In addition, at least for grades 5 and 6, we would be minimizing mobility in a major way, because right now we have 9 elementaries, and we would be going to 2 locations for where those students would be. So the mobility would be much, much reduced. Now, beyond that, mobility would be affected, could be affected by transportation. What we don't know yet, until we have the model we need to have in place, we don't know how transportation is going to be impacted. We've had a conversation with our transportation people. In fact, Mr. Coddington was talking to a member or a representative from Sodrel today, and we know that there are some considerations we haven't even considered yet. One of them would be to have a southern hub for transportation, for bus location. And they talked about, well, if C.R. Richardson is not going to be used, could that be a location for some of our buses? I don't know. I'm not so sure that would be ideal, but it's a concept that we haven't considered. There may be others. There may be, within our new plan, there could be pickup points, there could be shuttle points. We haven't come to that yet, because we don't exactly know where we need to create these scenarios. But there are scenarios being developed that would affect mobility, depending on if students or if parents would want their children to continue to go to the schools where they begin. And we have that happening from time to time right now. On transportation and redistricting, like I said, once we know what the buildings are, we'll know better how to plan our transportation. Once we know what the buildings are, we'll also know, in balancing our enrollment, where the redistricting is, which affects the transportation design. That remains to be seen. I'd also like to talk about a question that came up last week, which had to do with special programming at Hibbard. And one of the questions had to do with life skills. And in fact, that's come up many times in concerns that parents have brought to the website. So I've asked Mrs. Bergdahl to take a look. She's not going to talk about names or specific students, but I did ask her to take a look at some random IEPs, just to see if these IEPs could be serviced with integrity at a different location other than, in this case, Test. So, Mrs. Bergdahl, I'll let you talk about what your findings were.
Okay. Well, I went through, like Dr. Borf asked me to, I went through just a random 3 IEPs that would, so it's in place now. One of the students would have been at Highland at the 5-6 level, and then over at Test, and so that would be at the 5 through 8 level here going to Hibbert. So I took their disabilities and then I looked at different areas in their IEPs. And the first thing was talking about the special education services and also their related services that they would have to have according to their IEPs, and like speech therapy and occupational therapy, transportation, assisted technology, low vision or blind, physical therapy, paraprofessional assistance, all those kind of things, and then, of course, the life skills curriculum. And then also in the IEP, it addresses general considerations, and this is where it really talks about how the student will participate. So students will be able to participate in all educational programs and activities that are made available for non-disabled students. And so that was written in the IEPs. Students will be able to participate in non-educational and extracurricular activities that are made available to non-disabled students. So that was a part of it that I found. Also in the IEPs, it addresses least restrictive. And this is what I think some of your concerns were. Student will participate in general education classes to the extent that he or she is able for social interaction. And that's kind of what our main focus. He or she will participate in lunch, recess, field trips, class parties, presentations, guest speakers, and other school programs with his or her peers. So I kind of, the Logos program, the teachers could work together on how those social interactions could happen. The least restrictive environment would be just that the life skill teachers should be able to receive like a calendar of all the building events so that they can plan to be in part of that building. I didn't put it in this report, but I believe that, you know, when the teachers all get together in the buildings, there should be a representative from the life skills program to be a part of whatever that advisory council or something that the principal puts together. And then the peer interaction, I know that TEST has the general education students come down in the life skill classes and provide a support. So I think we could do that with early college and Logos 2 programs. So that's kind of my report back to Dr. Borf, that it'll all be kind of, as Mrs. Robinson's talked about, the ownership, all those teachers working together and trying to develop how it would look. You know, it's really going to be up to them how it should all look. But according to the students' IEPs, those will be the things that will be required, just like they have now in their settings.
Structure change is so hard for kids with learning problems and so forth. And when we were over at TEST today, we were talking to one of the life skills teachers, and she said that they have teachers there, the general ed teachers, that come in and work with the kids on their prep periods and so forth. And I think that's one of the things that's so important to those kids. It's so important to that program. And I just want to ask, why did you decide to move the life skills?
There were a couple factors. One would be we were looking for a place where we were considering special populations. Well, under exceptional ed, your high ability is in that special population. So is the life skills. There are so many pieces in just the general special education program. It wouldn't be practical to move the whole special education program over there. But when we were looking at exceptional programs, it seemed a natural that the two high ability programs and the life skills could be very synergistic with one another. The life skills students are in a general setting from pre-K to 4 in this scenario.
22.
They will always be in a regular setting from 9th grade to 12th grade. I would hate to think that we would deny them an opportunity to interact with high ability students who could also benefit from working more closely with them. I think that there's something to be gained by having those three special groups working together. And while I understand some of the misgivings of just moving the program physically, we can provide the physical space. We could provide even a better physical space, I would guess, than they have now within the area that they are at test.
Are they, is logos, would that be considered general education? Like they can, it says now that they would be part of general education classes, so it's the same with logos and
It would be. Many of the programs that we have are, or curriculum efforts that we have are project-based. And in those two high ability type programs, they're project-based, and that would lend itself to this kind of interaction with the life skills students. One of the questions I had was, that would be the same thing as allowing high school life skills to sit in on AP classes. I'm not so sure I think that's a bad thing. I don't know that it would be the full range of experiences we would hope they would get, but I think that there are some who might benefit from experiences like that with kids who have exceptional talents.
Well, I know that Hibbard, in looking at it today, will be a great facility for life skills, but that's not the main concern. You know, the program is the main concern.
That's right.
Well, and I also think that what is being planned is it's unnatural, because right now the life skills are in a building where there is logos, and they have not been interacting the way that we are going to be asking them to interact. And so, you know, I think if that had been a natural part of their program right now, then it would make a little more sense than, you know, all of a sudden we're going to move the programs and now you're going to interact. So I think that, you know, we have to realize that it just doesn't seem quite, something doesn't seem quite right.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. When we add fifth graders to both early college and Logos, will there be an additional teacher added to their cohort?
I would suspect there would be.
There would need to be, so there will be more staff than just the 4 assigned to that now. Okay.
But we have elementary logo staff that would just transfer. So.
Mm-hmm.
But and early college requires, yeah, a little different.
Well, and while we're talking about that too, because there was mention of the possibility of the pool being an asset for this program. And we walked in there today, and I tell you, I almost cried to see that beautiful pool sitting there, dark.
Yep.
Not in use during school time. And that, if we make use of an asset that we really haven't used in 10 years, it comes with a cost, because you do have to have someone in there to run it. And when you're working with a special needs population, they have to have certain certification, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a question mark.
It is a question mark, and right now, as you recall, we have partnered with an outside firm to run our pool. And there have been questions about whether we would continue to maintain that partnership. And while we haven't come to that point yet where we're ready to negotiate or talk about the future, I would hope that we would be open to that, because there could be some nice cooperative ventures to keep that open, maybe to link us with adult programs as well.
I think they're already working towards that right now, even though it's early on. But I know they've been talking with the school system about that. So,
Well, it would just be nice to see it used for all of our kids.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, back to the,
It's a nice pool, beautiful.
But it does come with a cost, because
Yes, it
you do
does.
have to have someone in there. But if we're going to call it an asset, then it needs to be worth that cost.
Well, and I think going back to the comments that I was making about the Safe Schools, Healthy Students, you know, there are financial decisions that obviously we have to set priorities, and so if that's a priority, then it's a priority.
Okay, any other questions on that? Well, I'd also like to address some of the questions, criteria for excellence in the buildings. I'm not so sure we've talked about advance ed in a while. Advance ed is the old North Central Association. We identify criteria for excellence within that accreditation program. In fact, if you walk through that, curriculum, instruction, assessment are monitored and adjusted systematically. Teachers participate in collaborative learning. The school has a formal structure by which each student is well known by at least one adult. School engages families in meaningful ways. I mean, the indicators are on the website there for you to look at, and we judge our schools by that. We accredit our schools by that, and that's what we do every few years as a result of the accreditation process. So we're mindful of that in our school improvement plans, which will change dramatically in this whole process. The school improvement plans are also factored into the North Central or the Advanced Ed process. So it's more than just the goals of academic achievement. It also has to do with culture, and it has to do with connecting with families and communication, and the list goes on. So I don't want us to lose sight that we are constantly looking at that as a means of maintaining quality service for the students and their families. We have quality also in programming that we have to be looking at, and when we're talking about a K-4 arrangement, let's not lose sight of the fact that we have talked about more intense focus through RTI in both remediation and enrichment. We talked about having those critical masses to do some of the programming that we may not be able to do with the full focus that we would like to do right now. We also received some question from the board on safety, and what I would like to do is remind everybody of the Safe Schools, Healthy Students grant, and the fact that it does provide for second steps and steps to respect. And those are curriculum, internally based programs that we're trying to infuse values also into students and staff on how to interact, how students interact with one another, and how we interact with students more effectively, to talk about anti-bullying, just respectful behavior not only to one another but also to adults and to the school community. So what I started talking about when we began this conversation was how we have come together to provide a plan that makes us better for having gone through it. And what we have for you tonight would be a series of answers that I hope addressed some of your concerns. But I also want you to remember that the entire reason we're going through this is to provide a more effective program designed at serving students. And I'm not so sure that we shouldn't go through the master planning objectives in greater detail, but we haven't prepared to do that tonight. We have prepared for your questions, but if we go through that, as we did in the actual document that was put together for the master plan, I think you'll find that we have answered the questions or addressed the questions that you raised, and then some.
I agree. I've heard a lot from the public, and I'm sure everybody else has been talking to people who say, when are you just going to move on? When are you going to make the decision? And I know you're anxious to get started, and at some point, not making a decision is going to hurt the program. So what things do you need for us to decide in order for you to start making plans? It would include programming, because there are limitless questions that we're going to have moving forward. But what
Well, there are several questions that we would have to come back to you on, even if you decided on the format, or almost all the different pieces of this plan. We need to have a decision made on the 4x4x4, if that is what you're looking at. We need to have a decision on the school closures. We probably need to have, well, for us to start moving.
Baxter?
We do need to have a decision on that. That would be a part of it.
Now, the redistricting comes then when we make the
That
decision.
will come at a later point.
Okay. And we can't make any decisions tonight, but I was wondering if maybe we're ready to start moving forward and getting a recommendation ready, and how you felt about it. A motion.
Well, I guess in my mindset, I'm still leaning towards the end of the month, the 25th. But if that's going to move up, then that's the prerogative of the majority. But I think there's I think I've come a long way from December 14th till today. But I'm not ready to say that I'm ready to vote Wednesday. So, but even today, I had sent an email to Dr. Borf. The repurposing of the Hibbert building is one area that I'm still struggling with that one, and primarily the more that I look at it, I'm wondering whether we would be better served possibly to look at it as being another intermediate school and leaving the Logos program where it's at, leave a life skills program where it's at, add the 4th, 5th to the life skills programs at Test, so it's there, leave the early college academy where it's at, and then we could balance the enrollment between the three schools. So with us reopening Hibbert in the short term, 225 students in a building that has a capacity of 450 students or 500 students, whatever, however we do that, and kind of goes against some of the things that we're trying to eliminate. Now, the question I have to ask myself is, one of the charges that we have given the superintendent is enrollment growth.
Mm-hmm.
So by doing this, will we increase our enrollment by having that building repurposed? And and I'm not advocating that we not do what's being proposed.
And I think that was the point of the programming, the way you were talking about it, right? To
Well,
grow enrollment.
It is. And
one of the ways.
We had a little email conversation about that. We've actually considered we actually considered a 5-8 intermediate at Hibbard, just having 3 intermediate buildings. One of our concerns about that was to create a program that would have an appeal, because we would leave the Logos program and the life skills at Test, but we would also leave the early college at Dennis. We aren't so sure what we would do at a 3rd intermediate that would provide such an appealing program that people from outside the community would say, this is something I would want for my child.
An international baccalaureate middle school.
Now, we could balance, it would be very easy to balance the enrollment that way. The numbers work beautifully that way. And we could even redistrict, we could put that into place. But what we saw in all the different versions that we looked at was almost a step back in time to a 3 middle school system, and we weren't wanting to do that. We'd been charged with something new, something different, bold, aggressive, and marketable. And
will we be able to
that's
add
what we tried
programming to Hibbard? Do we have the room that if we
Oh,
want?
certainly you could.
That's exciting.
Well, I too still have, that's my big question mark, and I would like to, we have creative teachers out there that are chomping at the bit to be empowered to do just exactly what you're talking about. And I think we could take it off of all of our plates and give it to some teachers. But what I would like to also, if I could have the floor here for a minute, because I've been thinking a lot about the vote and where I am on this myself, having tried to do as much work as I could toward it. I think that we still need to have conversation about possibly Hibbard. But what I was wondering is if we could agree, knowing what we want to vote for this in a couple days, and knowing what we have left, being very specific about what needs to be discussed and left on the table for we as a board, if we could not move forward in the plan's entirety, but perhaps move forward a little at a time, and kind of on Wednesday night draw up what we feel is important for the board to be a part of, and what we yet need to vote on. But if we are at a place where we feel comfortable in voting on the school closures and on the basic framework, which is the basic framework is our pre-K through 4, our 5 through 8, and our 9 through 12, knowing that we have a lot yet to talk about after we make that vote.
That would allow him to move forward
on the boundaries.
So for clarity, then, if we agree with that model, then how we repurpose Hibbert, we would still have some time
We
to
would
discuss
still have that. We would still be involved in the redistricting conversation, and we would have to vote on that. There are just some things that still, with the financial piece, there are parts of that we still need to, hash out and talk about. But at least that part could allow the redistricting to be thought about and to be brought to us maybe by, I don't know, by sometime soon. And, but we would have all that laid out, and we would know before we took the vote, what else we need to.
The only thing I would add is the Baxter, the desperate
yeah,
need
that's
for
part
the
of the-
alternative.
yeah,
The
that's
basic.
part of
The only
framework.
other thing we also need to keep in mind is that we don't make the programming decisions. So I'm not sure what else we vote on. I guess you would have to tell us what else we need to vote on.
Well, I would encourage you either to move forward with this plan or move forward with an adaptation, because we can't bring you the redistricting on a question as large as what you're going to do with Hibbard. Because if we are going to use Hibbard as a 5-8 intermediate building, we've got to build the district for that. And that will have an immediate impact on what we do with the busing. It would also have an impact on what we do to start making that building ready. We have some...
Or the others.
Well, that's true.
Overstaffing decisions.
It has staffing implications. And what I'm suggesting is that we expedite that conversation. If it's just, let's move on that. Charge us with what you need, but we need to go forward one way or the other.
The question for you about Hibbard is what, Jeff? Either use it as a total separate intermediate. Is yours that, or is it just the life skills?
No, it's a separate.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a separate intermediate.
Suzanne?
Yeah,
My question, too, is you don't grow life skills. That's at Hibbard. And I don't understand how you grow early college or Logos when they have very specified enrollment criteria or entrance criteria.
Well, what you're looking at would be people who are opting to return their children to the Richmond Community Schools, who have maybe opted to take them somewhere else for those same services.
Well, we've had waiting lists for both of those programs, haven't we?
We do have a waiting list for early college.
Yeah,
Well,
early
yes, and we
college.
do for Logos, too.
So that's
Well, then
Both
could
right
you
there.
give a number as far as what do you foresee as the growth being?
I could not give you the number as we're sitting here, but we could talk to you about the waiting list that we might have had and what that would mean. I'd be ready to talk about that.
I've always
But
thought
is
the
the
Logos
waiting
program
list
grow.
for people out that are no longer in attendance of Richmond Community Schools? Or because, growing the program internally, I think would be very easy to do. But to actually have people come from other school districts and other private schools and so forth to us specifically for that program, that's a whole different.
That's a different topic, but that's what we would market towards, too. I mean, we have been told to do something that is marketable and bold. Now, maybe that's not the right marketable and bold concept, and we're quite ready to listen to other ideas that the board may have. We've had this conversation ourselves, and when I say ourselves, I'm talking about the cabinet, and we haven't been able to arrive at any resolution on that. But if your charge is to move off the programming and develop a school, that's a whole different charge, and as long as we understand what our guidelines are, we can do that.
Can I guess, I spent most of this weekend going between master planning and preparing for our board meeting Wednesday night, so can I suggest that we come to the next Wednesday's, or in 2 days, come back and bring forth, I guess the document that I've shared with Dr. Borf today, I think has some interesting points. I'm not necessarily trying to sell it, but the items that I discussed with you as far as if we did it as an intermediate and my rationale why doesn't affect the 4x4x4 model.
No.
I mean, I will say personally, I've received a lot of phone calls. I had, even Sunday. There's a lot of parents that are concerned with fifth graders moving in with eighth graders. But then on the same hand, here's this move nationally to go to K through 8. To be honest with you, if I had to choose one of those two models, I would by far rather choose a 5 through 8 than I would a K through 8.
Well, and speaking to teachers also, the teachers were the ones that suggested the pre-K 4 and the 5 through 8.
So, although, I believe most of the people that I have talked to now, with the exception of the safety of the fifth grader going into the intermediate level, as long as we provide the services and the extra support. I really liked Dixie's comment at our last board meeting. We have a ninth grade academy. Well, maybe we ought to have a fifth, sixth grade academy. But regardless of what we do, we're going to have all the research that I've read states that when we have a transition, the child in the first year that is below average in performance is typically the one that suffers. The children that are average and above typically rebound rather quickly. Now, that's what I've read, and I'm not really disputing that or wanting to get into a debate about that because I'm not an educator. But that's what I've read. So I think we could solve the parents' concerns with providing a really strong support system for their fifth and sixth graders at the intermediate school. And based on our financial reasons, I can lean towards it, but my concern with how we repurpose the Hibbert building doesn't affect that model.
Suzanne's been trying to say something for about 5 people. I'm sorry.
Hopefully I can still remember. Does it give us the flexibility to start with having the sort of center for exceptional students, with the idea that that's sort of our growth spot? I mean, we talked a little bit about that. If we experience the growth that we're looking forward to, that CR campus would give us that. Is it possible that creating this exceptional student building would sort of start that and then give us the opportunity in the future to move forward to a more of a magnet situation?
I think that's kind of the direction that I went with Dr. Borf, I believe. I thought if the IB program was one that he felt strong about, he made a comment, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it was a 3-year process for that to be. So, we could actually repurpose that building and make it an intermediate school and then put the people in charge who want to take ownership of that and develop that program into it. I mean, so yes.
But I guess what I'm concerned about is that if you leave the student populations that we're talking about where they are now, then you've sort of stunted their growth. You see what I'm saying? Because you're going to be building the 5-8.
The logos growth and the
right. Where I'm wondering if by sort of jump-starting it with the exceptional student populations, does that give you the springboard to create that exceptional 5-8?
I think I would add a third exceptional program to Hibbert.
Exactly.
And it might be a language immersion program that you could very easily begin to do immediately, that we could begin to grow that. Exactly.
And then you let the teachers and the instructors.
Well, because then you have, you're going to have early college where you're going to grow, hopefully. You're going to have logos where you're going to grow, hopefully, and then you're going to have the third
and then you really have
where you're going to grow.
Something people want to. I mean,
exactly. And you don't call it a school because now I hate to speak practical and bring us back to the reality. Part of our challenge is we have 2 middle schools that have not fared well with their grades, and if we take away that cadre of people who would could imbalance the test scores even more, and I hate to call it like that. We kind of have to allow them to stay connected to that, yet have the space
Well, and
to
respond
do
to,
something.
though, some of the requests we've heard from parents,
Exactly.
which is, I mean, I heard from several Garrison folks is if you created an exceptional student school, or what do they call it, high ability school, we would go there.
We heard a lot of that when we were talking to parents before you even made your recommendation.
And you have to look at it probability-wise. I mean, looking at everything, which school, which type of school has the best chance to grow? Is it a 5/8 general ed population that's specialized, or is it several exceptional programs?
I would say
But
the
it
latter.
seems weak right now with just
two.
But then by polling, the other thing that by polling sort of the students is that, and creating this sort of really cool environment with 3 circular things going on, that also gives the flexibility, I think, to test and dentists to create what is it they want to be.
Exactly.
Which is, we talked about fine arts or performing arts or something to that effect, or technology.
STEM.
Maybe one of them becomes a STEM and one of them becomes a arts and humanities.
Well, and it gives them the space.
That was the other thing I thought. If you don't pull
Right.
anyone out, and then we still get to have sort of this exceptional thing going on that draws different people from different places, because language immersion or something like that would draw a different set of people than maybe early college or Logos would. And you could still have all of those things and also create this awesome, like, performing arts maybe magnet.
I mean, as we were walking today through Hibbard, we got really excited because the Hibbard building
It has some great space.
it has some
Big
great
rooms
spaces.
and, yeah.
Great spaces.
So I would really like for us to consider, I hate to divvy up the intermediate kids among 3 intentional. I mean, I want that to be a choice. We don't have a choice, and what you're saying
that's what I guess
is
I'm
keep
lobbying for.
Hibbard as a choice, but
Which
make
also
the
gives
choices
us-
a little bigger. But I do think we're coming back to the life skills, because I've heard more concerns about the life skills. Once I start talking to parents about, well, have you ever looked at a preschool kid and a 6th grader? You know, come on. The difference in the maturity may not be as
Just make
much.
me feel comfortable that they're going to be separated. I mean, I definitely understand it, but I had a 6th grader who was like, "What are you going to tell me? I have to stay in elementary school?" He was mad.
Me too.
But if we keep Hibbard repurposed as a special school with special programs and creatively think about that, we could still make the decision Wednesday on the 4x4x4, repurposing Hibbard kind of generally. For me, frankly,
With maybe the future plan
life
to add
skills
something
question
else.
is a bigger question than the other piece.
Because your concern is the whole connecting them to the general
Well,
and keeping
Yeah.
them connected to the activities.
Yeah.
Is there the possibility of leaving life skills only where they are and have an additional program, exceptional program of some kind at Hibbard with the other 2?
That's, you could not leave the life skills where they are at test without
Without building
additional
on.
facilities.
Unless you put the 5-6 at Dennis.
But then we're lessening our
Yes.
opportunity
For them.
for growth.
And you're not doing your 4x4x4, which I think
Well,
is a problem.
but also, I mean, I understand, but also we're concerned with having space at test. Now I understand that if we move the logos out and the life skills out, they'll pick up some, but they're still, if you had a 3rd intermediate school, the capacity, your middle schools would be at a 70% capacity.
Well, and we may pull some more students out even if we keep the plan as is. I mean, there's a chance that we'll have more students than are currently in Logos come to Logos, or more than are currently in.
I mean, granted, this is a lot riskier in a sense, but it's, or I think it's because we already.
Which is riskier?
By creating a
New program.
3rd intermediate school, a new, it's a risk because we already have life skills and early college. It's already developed. You know, we already have kids that are involved and so forth. But I think it's a whole lot more exciting to.
Well, and just one other point I want to bring up. I was talking to a parent that it was interesting, the conversation I had with his parent, because we talked about several different items. One of the items was, and she made reference to the fact that if we moved, they considered pulling her child out of the Logos program to keep it in the elementary for another, because of the 6th grade. She really felt strong for the nurturing environment of the elementary setting, and she considered pulling. And she made some other comments, like if the Logos moved to the high school, she would definitely pull her child out of Logos. I have a concern that by separating the program, although we have this great vision, I'm also concerned that we could possibly lose enrollment, because some of the parents may not have the faith or may be concerned that their child may miss out on something. There is something to say that a student that is above or below the average point, that they deal with everybody. You know, they're the people in the building that they associate with cover the whole spectrum. So I have a slight concern that some parents may limit if we move just the specialized program to here. Now, it's just my thought. I guess what I would like to do is, just for my own comfort, I'd like to email my document that I had sent to Dr. Borf to the other board members, just for consideration. And if the majority thinks that it's not anything worth considering or have further conversation with, I'm okay with that as well. I just feel like I need to discuss it. I'd like for us to walk away from tonight's meeting with what we've learned tonight. Then I think the question about when to vote, we should ask this Wednesday. You know, and if we need to, if the 25th is too soon, then we can set another meeting for the Wednesday after that, the 18th, or whatever. But I didn't come tonight prepared to make a decision for Wednesday, and I'm not sure I'll be ready for Wednesday. Now, that doesn't prohibit the vote from taking place, but I guess I'd at least like to walk away today, and then, because we're only talking 2 days before we have another meeting.
Yeah. Except for that, I mean, we've been studying it pretty closely for quite some time. My biggest concern is that all of these are very interconnected. And if we, as I think you said, rather than pulling one thing out, I think we need to feel satisfied with all of the parts. Because I don't know that it gives you, I don't know that it helps you guys if we pull a part out and just vote for part of it, because they're all so interconnected. Every time I consider boundary lines, if you take any piece out of that, it impacts boundary lines.
Well, I think the boundary line piece of it, we could, I think after, I've thought about that a lot. I mean, we're going to, that's going to be a discussion that we're going to have and make decisions on later anyway. I mean, I would think that you would come back to us and say, we suggest making these boundary line changes, and I'm assuming that we'll have conversation on them regardless of when we vote on this master plan. As far as, it's not going to be a decision that you make arbitrary.
No, your master plan decision will make an impact on how we do the redistricting.
Right. So,
but that's where Suzanne is so right.
Yeah.
If we do something different with that Hibbard plan, it will impact the redistricting.
Well, I just think about the conversations that, like I said, I've had over the course of the last few days, and the folks that are talking about different things. Every conversation would change depending on if we change the package. They would think about things differently.
The toughest, the cabinet can tell you, the toughest conversation we had focused on the Hibbard building.
Sure.
And when we finally left that conversation, it wasn't just all this, we feel like this is absolutely the only way we should be going. I mean, we left it more or less consensus that something has to be done, and this is a plan. This is a defensible plan. But there are other plans out there that could work very well. I said to Jeff today, numbers-wise, using that as an intermediate facility, as a building, as a school building, answers all the issues. It doesn't answer the marketability, and we couldn't come up with a marketing plan.
Well, but does it also not leave extra capacity in every intermediate then?
Yes, it does.
See, and I'm worried about that because we have talked about that. We talked about that before, that if we didn't move forward to a 5-8, that we would be in danger of losing our second middle school. You know, we would be in danger of having one middle school if we didn't make a 5-8 type decision. Just projecting and allowing for the possibility of future decline. So if we open a third full-blown 5-8, aren't we setting ourselves up for quite a bit of unused capacity?
We'd have
and
to.
I know we are with the programs too, but
I don't think it would be.
We'll
quite a
explore
bit,
that
but-
for you. We'll come back with a scenario on that to
because
show
I
you
would
what
hate
that
for
would
us
look like.
to open a third with all great intentions and all kinds of great ideas, and then go, you know, our enrollment really isn't supporting 3. We need to go back to 2.
Well, another thing we've talked about, and since a master plan is supposed to help us prepare for the future, by reopening Hibbard, and we've talked about possibly, if we tear down CR, eventually building on the upper level. So this opens the opportunity for something else to happen in the future.
It gives us the wiggle room, and
Yeah.
that's the part I was actually excited about, was that it gave us something new and different to offer, but also that place for future exciting opportunities.
And if you look at that building, I was struck again. I taught in that building. I moved to that building. It has locations for various things to happen that
Which I guess
test
is
and
con-
dentists do not have.
But that's kind of conducive to the sort of special
Absolutely.
program thing, right? To have sort of the
Absolutely.
center, sort of almost program, not school within a school, but kind
Right.
of that that concept.
Well, I think in Dan's comments that he sent to all of us, he also suggested a different purpose for Hibbard than putting the logos and early college. And one of his suggestions was math science, a STEM type program. So, you know, I think there is some thought out there going in that direction. I don't know what it would take to develop it, but that's
where
certainly.
that's where you want the teachers to take that. That's where I would
Exactly.
love. We give them the structure to
Well-
operate under, and then
And I'm just saying, if you reopen it, I mean, I don't want any movement, and I think parents have said, fix this for
a long
a long time.
right.
Which is
But-
what putting a
but
program
by
there would do.
opening and putting programs in there, it does open up the opportunity, and this is, I haven't thought about this a lot, but it does open up the opportunity to develop more in the coming years.
Right. Well, what I'm hearing then is that we're close. We have a lot to think about because we've gotten a lot of information again tonight, and we'll move towards making a recommendation. If you're not comfortable with it Wednesday night, then
So, are we going to give the administration some idea of what direction we want them to be thinking about for Hibbard? Are we prepared tonight? Do we need to think about it and come back Wednesday? Because that's a big part that needs to be solved before we can vote.
Doesn't it seem like the two pieces are open as an intermediate school, a third intermediate school, or open as programmatic specialties?
with the
a
plan to
magnet.
maybe add a third.
That's as I see it.
Right.
But- so
but
tho-
you-
those
but
two
you wouldn't add
options.
that third in. That wouldn't have to happen right away. I guess that's the part
first
I'm
year.
thinking. Is you wouldn't have language immersion, for example. I could get really excited about that. That wouldn't have to happen now. That could be something.
So
that
do you
could
have
be developed.
additional information we can have, or is that just our thinking?
We could provide the scenario of opening that as an intermediate building. We can show you what the capacity is. We can show you what we've talked about.
What it would do to the other two.
The impact on the other two.
Yeah,
Keeping life skills where it is and the other two programs.
Early college and logos, and I'm not saying that they're stifled now, but I'm just saying once you pack more students in there, if you leave them where they are, does that give them the room to be creative and figure something else out
That's
too?
going to create some issues.
That, I think so,
Well,
because where would you put the fifth
you
graders?
you wouldn't put as many though.
Right.
In there.
Right, there wouldn't be as many, but then does it give you that sort of handcuff, not the growth?
We'll
does
show
that
you the
limit your
impact.
growth, I guess, is my
I realize that we have a strict timeline, but I would like the additional information. I will say this, I believe a lot of people at TEST believe Logos belongs there. Logos has melted into that fairly well. So it isn't, I don't think it's as simple as, it isn't, we're thinking about the positives at it ending up at Hibbert, but I don't know if we've really considered the negatives of it leaving TEST.
Right.
So.
Well, and some of the, because I remember when it moved to TEST, and people weren't nearly as excited about it going to TEST at that time.
They were really concerned. Yeah.
And they liked being segregated and alone. So
I think they've really gelled.
and I think
though,
that's great.
and
I think that's great. And so I guess my question for
That's the
that
faculty.
conversation is, what are the things? What are the elements that made that good? Is it something we can or cannot recreate in a different building with different students?
Isn't
I
the
guess that's my
faculty of
question.
Logos excited about moving,
No, I wouldn't say that.
No.
growing?
Well, because
Growing, maybe,
they
but
have
not
found
moving.
a home there. I mean, like I said,
I haven't talked
but
to them yet. So.
the things change, like I said. And I guess my question is, because I remember, I mean, my kids were like right in the middle of that when that happened. A couple of things that were added at the time that were very important to us were the physical education opportunities, the alternate language opportunities, and some of those kinds of things that they didn't have separated. Well, if those are the things they're worried about losing, do they have to be lost, I guess? And I don't think they do, so.
Well, and it could be that this, if we decide to go a different route with Hibbert and leave both early college and Logos where they are, it might give them an opportunity to kind of reevaluate, maybe reevaluate the Logos program. I would think that if we would lessen the number of students at TEST with this third intermediate school, that might create some more space.
Well, we would still have to challenge both early college and Logos to continue to expand to the next grade level.
Yep, absolutely.
Exactly.
So there would have to be an additional room for that.
Okay. And it's not.
I think we've had a good conversation, and I appreciated all the information that you guys came back with.
You're welcome.
So I'll ring that bell. Here's a shock.